All right, guys, that was the theme from Interstellar, if you didn't know. Yeah, I thought I'd start a space and sort of go over, Sailor's going on a crusade, it seems, sort of anti BIP 110. And I got to tell you, if you're like me, this makes me even more convinced that big Bitcoin should not be in charge of the rules of Bitcoin. That's kind of my view. I think that you know uh, you may not like what you may not like what mechanic his point of view and Matthew Cratter, but I don't know, like I really think that there's a lot of stuff that really resonates to me as a Bitcoiner and what they're saying. And when I see Saylor come with these AI generated hit pieces on BIP 110, I just had to immediately make another anti-AI hit piece. And I got to tell you, I think mine's better than his. Puncher, how's it going?
Good. Brad got trapped on the boardwalk in a driving rainstorm in New Jersey, but
Oh, wow.
everybody survived. Yeah,
Wow.
I was shocked to see that today. Just popped into my feed right when he sent it, and I started reading it. And my eyes started glazing over. I'm like, oh, okay. He spent 15 minutes, running an AI and shoved it out there. And then last night, look at I didn't know I exist, but I just said, hey, how come Saylor, don't put out this cryptic medical speak. If you're going to weigh in, weigh in. You want the MIT? Make the case.
The
So
that word iatrobic or whatever that I don't know what that.
iatrogenic. It means
Yeah.
The cure is worse than the medicine. Like if you have a
Right.
iatrogenic indications for a drug are everything they read. Like, oh, you could have heart
Right.
failure, you could lose all your hair, you could die, you could commit suicide. That's
You usually see it in like commercials for Viagra or something, right? If the erection persists for more than 4 hours, consult a
call your
doctor.
doctor. I'm like, I'm going to call a press conference.
Oh man, Sam, how's it going?
It's going good, Fred. Good to
Uh,
have you back with the space. You were conspicuous by your absence. I
Well,
like your spaces, so I'm glad you fired one up. Puncher, I have a vision of you as a guy with a crooked nose and a big black hat, and you're over a cauldron and you're putting potions in it. You summoned Saylor to speak.
I'm pretty
You
sure.
summoned him.
I did call him out, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't me. He's probably like, who's this idiot sitting on a toilet? Who's this idiot?
So, look, Fred, I'll give my opinions really quickly and then give someone else a chance. I just find it interesting that Puncher and I were back and forward in comments last night. Puncher was saying, um, I reposted Saylor. The first line of one of his tweets was "Fiat is the enemy," and I quoted it and I said, "Look, how can you call this guy the enemy when he starts a tweet by saying fiat is the enemy? You know, this is a Bitcoiner." So Puncher and I went back and forward in the comments a little bit, and here's what gets lost in the mix, Fred. Puncher was saying, look, Saylor needs to speak on this issue. Saylor doesn't need to do, like, if you buy, what are the principles of Bitcoin? I bought my Bitcoin. I'm holding it.
I think you're talking about British HODL's principles. I know those.
Oh, no. I'm a bit more cultured, Fred, being Irish. No, look, my opinion is I'm not answerable to anyone, nor is anyone who holds Bitcoin. So look, I'm up here on the fence on this issue, but what I would say to both sides is let's not forget, like, let's stop putting guns to people's heads and saying, hey, you have to decide, are you with me or are you with the pedophiles on the other side? Because this thing about calling each other pedophiles, guys, you know, have a debate, let people decide. I don't like the pressure to be put on one side or the other. I don't like the pressure being put on people to speak and publicly cast their vote. That's not what being a Bitcoiner is. Um, like it's, I just think let people go about their business. They're going to decide. People are, if you're smart enough to have gotten into Bitcoin and hold your Bitcoin in self custody, you're going to be smart enough to figure this out without people tearing strips off each other on spaces. And Fred, my last comment, I've often outlined, I heard about Bitcoin in 2013, didn't buy it. Heard about it again 2018. I won't go into the whole story, but there was a throwaway comment in a restaurant in Manhattan. And I came home and I thought, man, I better look at this Bitcoin thing again. And I Googled it and I landed on a Reddit thread. This was January or February of 2018. I landed on a Reddit thread, which was, I guess it was about 6 or 8 months out of date. It was the dregs of the block size wars. And I scanned the comments and I said to myself, I'm going to keep my money in I'm not putting money into that thing. These people are idiots. So look, let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater here. We've all got opinions. We want to pick a side, but we're all team Bitcoin. And I'm just concerned. I'm just concerned how deep these wounds go. So look, I would call for a bit of maturity. Let's try to educate people instead of calling people pedo. I mean, it's just
Well,
ridiculous to
Sam,
watch that.
it is, bud. But listen, first of all, only one side comes in for the last months and calls people retards and morons and idiots and like that. I'm sorry, but when I was neutral on this, that was one side, and it was the autist side who doesn't seem to understand Austrian economics and talks to people about how technically stupid they are. And that's
Yeah,
whatever. That's why I just sat there and I listened for 8 months. And I listened. I get it. I get the issues. But, the question is Bitcoin money? Period. And, Saylor is building like the massive You know, somebody asked me today, what's the what do they say? What's the what's big Bitcoin? Like big Bitcoin is the massive derivatives complex that's been built around Bitcoin by guys like Saylor. You know, like I'm like, do you not think that exists? Not to say that it wouldn't have happened anyway, but he is the guy who did it. And you know, do not believe that Bitcoin is an exigent threat to their system. Because look, these are where the two camps really separate. If you talk to Jeff Booth, he's like, these two systems are mutually exclusive over time. Period. One will eat the other. Saylor's of the opinion that somehow fiat can, survive and integrate Bitcoin and continue on. Well, I'm in the Jeff Booth camp. At some point, when there's
Although, to be fair, Puncher, to Sam's point, he did sort of point out in that last post about the one prior to the AI slop, about, fiat's has the problem. You know what I mean?
no, it has the problem, but then why is he building a fiat system around Bitcoin? Look, here's what I'll say. He never seems to talk about Bitcoin as money. And now we got this new digital capital narrative. Look, Bitcoin is money. If Bitcoin's not money, then Bitcoin's not Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the system that's built outside the fiat system. That is going to be the next system, or it's going to eat the current system. And, or you believe they'll peacefully coexist. I don't happen to believe that. So, yeah, he never talks about Bitcoin as a medium of exchange, like ever.
Well, and look, for example, this is really interesting. Did you see the Parker Lewis video by any chance?
I have, and it's in my queue.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think one of the things that, Parker Lewis was talking about was, he's sitting there going, the advent of STRK or STRC, I can't even remember which one, was the most interesting thing in Bitcoin in the last, and meanwhile, Jack Dorsey has just got Square pushed to 3,000 merchants, you know what I mean, to accept Bitcoin. So, he's never talking about the actual, anything
Did you
to
say
do with,
3,000?
sorry?
Did you say 3,000? I think it's like 1.2 million merchants right now.
Yeah. Sorry, excuse me. I don't know how many that are actually plugged into Bitcoin. I might have missed
It's
it.
above a million now, so they
Yeah,
announced that in the last Bitcoin conference.
right. You're right. So, anyway, so that's pretty big news, right? That basically Square enables people to pay and receive in Bitcoin. I mean, I don't know. Like, if I had the most Bitcoin of anybody, I would make a point to bring that up. But he doesn't.
So,
He didn't do that, and he doesn't even find it interesting. You know.
so,
There's a,
so, Fred, can I ask a question of Puncher? I think Puncher's a good guy, and I like debating with him on this. If I'm over here in New York, and let's say I've got 50 Bitcoin, right, and I go up to the Empire Casino in Yonkers tonight, and I liquidate myself, and I'm reckless, and throw away that 50 Bitcoin.
well, they take.
Does anybody?
Did they take Bitcoin at that casino? That's good news.
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure they'll take my Bitcoin. But look, no one's going to care, right? People just say, "Ah, fuck it, that's Sam. Screw him." Now, if I had 500 Bitcoin, it might make a headline, might make a tweet here and there. If I had 5,000 Bitcoin and I did that, or if I had 50,000 Bitcoin, so what I'm trying to ask you, Puncher, is why are we singling out Sailor is a holder of Bitcoin, the same as me, the same as you, the same as Fred, the same as the guy that has 0.25 Bitcoin. Why are we trying him in a different court under different laws? And we're saying, well, but he's never called it money. Puncher, we could sit down and have a debate and we could agree on 99 points. And I'm pretty sure we're going to find one point where we disagree, right?
No, but it's an
And
exigent point, Sam. It's not just a minor point. It's a huge point. It is the point. If you don't believe that Bitcoin is money and that you want to keep it as digital, a pristine collateral, then you do to it what paper money did to gold. You put it on the
but
side as something that backs up the huge fiat derivative complex around it, and stablecoins become the money. I don't want stablecoins to become the money. Stablecoins are dollars backed by nothing, printed out of thin air. It's the biggest deal of all of them. If he doesn't see Bitcoin as money, then he and I disagree. He thinks that the two systems can mutually coexist,
But
and he's
but
going to build that complex for that to happen, or at least attempt to, and I
so,
categorically reject that.
okay, so here's my question. I was a bit long-winded before. Here's my question. He obviously owns an amount of Bitcoin that's over the threshold of what you consider uh, his opinion to be dangerous, right?
No, no,
Because
no,
my
no,
opinion,
no, no. I don't consider his opinion to be dangerous. I'm curious about his opinion. I'm
yeah,
curious
but
because a lot of people do think that that the sun rises and sets with this guy, with Bitcoin.
but
People
but
who
but
don't
but do you
understand
take
Bitcoin.
do you take my point that as a Bitcoiner, like where do we go from here? What if we set a precedent? What if we come after Fred next and we say Fred has never spoken about what type of cold wallet he likes, so
He's
we're
given,
gonna have a witch hunt
Sam,
against Fred.
those are, no, no, no. Those are like ancillary, non-salient issues.
I can explain. I can explain. So if you look at the Lightning Network, which is obviously the large L2 that we use for smaller payments, the idea is that you need to put capital on Lightning, right? So you need to have people and companies actually putting their liquidity and their Bitcoin on hot wallets to support the liquidity and the channels on Lightning. And the problem with the messaging of like STRC is money, or we're making Bitcoin into money through our treasury company, that kind of competes with Lightning. So for me, I mean, I go to these conferences, right? I go to the treasury conferences, and I I can tell you, like, the majority of people are not Bitcoiners in those places, and the problem here is that he's kind of the poster child for treasury companies, and people think that everything he says automatically is the truth, and that's a big problem. So there are a few treasuries that are deploying on Lightning, but I think all of them should be deploying on Lightning because nothing else makes sense, really.
So Puncher, I'm going to land the plane here. Um, if this paper derivative complex that Saylor stands accused of, let's say it blows up in his face, who's going to lose? Saylor. If Grant Cardone goes off and starts to do something with Bitcoin and it blows up in his face, Grant gets blown up, Bitcoin survives. If Saylor gets blown up, Bitcoin survives. If I get blown up, same thing. I'm just highlighting the point, Puncher, that why are we calling out this guy and holding him to a different set of because that's not what Bitcoin is, Puncher. He's a
Yeah,
holder of Bitcoin.
Because this fight's coming. This fight is coming.
not really, man. It's only yellow belt maxis fucking try to do these purity tests.
That's
It's
me.
so
No, no, no.
retarded.
Yeah, that is
You
me.
know what I mean?
I'm a
It's like
Bitcoin
a
as money maxi. You're right.
yeah,
100%.
but it's a yellow belt. It's just not. It's someone that hasn't been here long
What
enough to know that
what
everyone.
is a
Dude,
black belt then?
I've
You
been here
know,
since
they're all no
2013.
black. It's just not being here long enough to know that all the maxis are shit corners and have shit coined or done something or said something or did
2013.
something stupid. Like it's just all of them. Max Kaiser, Jimmy's, all of them, bro. Like June said, like everybody. Like
I
is
don't get your
so
point.
it's
What's
like.
your point? I
Well,
haven't been
my
around
point
long
is,
enough.
yeah, because these purity tests are only fucking done by guys that are fucking yellow belt maxis, bro. Just
The
chill out.
purity tests are because Bitcoin is not fiat.
Jeez.
You sound like a fool. You don't understand Bitcoin. You don't understand what Bitcoin actually is.
I
The-
don't
It's
understand. I'm not
fuck you
puncher.
money. It's not inside the fiat
We're
system. It's
not. We're
not
not
in.
puncher. We
Not
don't
in.
understand. We have
Listen,
no
it doesn't
idea.
have anything to do with me. I'm making an argument. I'm not. It's not. I'm not trying to win an argument because I just want to be right. This is the existential issue with Bitcoin. It is a system outside of the fiat system because the fiat system is inherently corrupt and going to zero. And if you're inside of that system in any way, ultimately over a long enough timeline, if Bitcoin is successful, that all collapses. So the idea that we can integrate these two systems and that they are not mutually exclusive is just at the highest level, we disagree. At the highest level, we disagree
Yeah, it
about what
never was a
Bitcoin is.
zero sum game. It's just it was never a zero sum game. It's always a really bad take to say, "Oh, the fiat's going to zero." No, no, it's not.
Okay, dude, you haven't thought deeply enough about this issue if you're scoffing at this.
I'm
And
sorry,
maybe
boss. I
you
didn't
haven't
just get
been
here.
around long enough.
I just didn't get here, boss.
What's
So
the
what do you
point?
want to? What
I
do you want
didn't
a
get his
dick
point.
measure? Who got here? I'm here in 2013. What does
100%.
that matter?
I want a dick measure.
Okay,
100%. I want
when
one.
were you
Pull it
here,
out.
dude?
Pull it out. Let's see.
When were you here? It's a metaphor for who's here the longest, not who's got the longest dick, you weirdo. When have you been here?
Hey,
When did
Punch.
you? When did you become in? When did you get into Bitcoin?
Hey, the referee's stepping in here. Puncher, let me ask a question. If Grant Cardone gets the 845,000 Bitcoin, and I hope he does,
Look, what
are you
puncher?
are
Go
you
ahead.
are you going to go after Grant and say Bitcoin's not real estate? You can't make a real estate product out of Bit. Like, where do we
No,
draw the
no,
line on
no,
this,
no, no.
Puncher?
Listen, Grant's a big boy. Grant's going to take chances. Grant is very successful in his field. He understands what he's doing. But at the end of the day, things that are going to be denominated in dollars, I just don't think that over a long enough time span, no amount of dollars are going to buy you any Bitcoin ever at some
Look,
point.
Grant is cool and all, but me and Scottie Pippen met Satoshi in 1993. Don't at me, bro.
Okay, you know who Satoshi is, Scotty.
Me and Scotty, we both met him in '93.
Copy that. So look, if you talk to Jeff Booth, Jeff likes Michael Saylor. He doesn't wish him ill. I don't wish Michael Saylor ill. Michael Saylor is way smarter than me, especially as it comes to fiat systems and how they work and the engineering behind them. But fundamentally, Michael Saylor and I disagree on, I think, what Bitcoin is. I think
Well,
Bitcoin is
here's
money.
why it's relevant, Puncher, is we actually have a BIP that's scheduled for activation in 3 weeks, right? That happens to be relevant. Now, you may say, yeah, we're a bunch of yellow belt wussies to worry about this thing, and we should just move on to other subjects. And you may be right, Jimmy. You may be right. We may not have the black belt that you have, but all those people. I know all those people that you mentioned. And look, I don't think anybody's got a black belt, but
Me
what we can
too. We're on the same page. Nobody has a black belt. That's my
right. So
point.
nobody has a black belt, but the thing I think where I think the confusion is that we this dialogue of the suit coiners, right, in these treasury conferences that Dave is attending, we've gone into a really weird place. You know what I mean? And it's reminding me of that scene in the Big Short, where they're at this conference and the guy raises his hand, it's like, hey, how are you gonna
Jimmy,
do
I'm
that?
that guy. I'm that guy at every conference, dude. I mean, I can send you the links.
You see what I'm saying? Like, it just
I
feels
asked
to
20
me like,
questions, and they're like, "Get this guy out of here."
yeah, get this guy out of here. Look, I like Tim Kosman's a nice guy and everything, but like, this suit coiner energy that is being like, hey, we're gonna take it from here, guys. We got the suits. We got the derivatives. We're gonna have digital credit is gonna be the new money. I mean, I'm sort of like, bro, bro, like, let's get people to send satoshis to other people from A to B. Read the white paper. It is a means of payment, a digital currency, peer to peer. Okay, that is what this thing is, and it's
Fred, you
not
recognize
meant to
these guys?
store JPEGs, man. You know,
You
Tom Young had
recognize
a
these
thing.
guys,
It's like,
Fred?
I
no,
think
it is not Dropbox. It is
I think
not
that's a
4chan.
bad take. I think that's a really bad take because then we get into this, sort of like capital controls, right? You end up being more like a commie because, like, if I have Bitcoin, I should be able to burn it if I want to. I should be able to do whatever I want. It's my property.
You
It's the purest
can, Jimmy.
form of
You
private
absolutely
property.
can.
And so when
You
somebody
absolutely can.
moralizes like you're not supposed to be able to do something with it, then you turn into a soul. You're Mom Dami now. You sound like Mom Dami.
No, Mondami has the power to stop you from doing something. I don't, but I can't. If you're going to jump off a bridge, I can tell you, Jimmy, don't jump off the bridge. Now you're going to do what you want, and the idea that I can stop Sailor doing from whatever it is he wants to do. But with regard to this BIP 110, I'm like, I want to know what everybody's motives are. I want to know what
You,
everybody thinks.
Yeah, but
you, you
before you forcibly stop someone from doing something with their private property, the first thing you do is moralize about it. You make a judgment on it. You say whether it's right or wrong, but then begin
Right.
to justify why. Yeah, that's what. That's
Well,
literally
if you're
this.
gonna if you're
This is
gonna
the
stick
steps
a if you're
towards
gonna stick
communism
a
here. You
if
know,
you're gonna
it's
stick
like
a hot poker in your eyeball, am I
so when
moralizing
Fred
if I told you it
when
was a
Fred
bad
says that
idea?
you can't put JPEGs on the blockchain, well, why the fuck not? Right. So if I bought
Because
Bitcoin and I
it
want to waste
changes
my
Bitcoin
Bitcoin
from what it.
on JPEGs, like let's say I bought
No, you're
Bitcoin, I
not
want to
wasting it.
waste it, right? Why shouldn't I?
You're not wasting your
Do you
Bitcoin.
make your beds
You're
in the
destroying the
in your
network.
room? Like,
I
It doesn't destroy the network.
what do you mean it
Over
destroys the
time, it
network?
does.
How?
That's the idea.
No, it
Over
So,
doesn't.
time, it
No,
weighs
yeah, but
out.
it hasn't, Puncher. It hasn't and it won't.
Just because it
This is
hasn't doesn't mean it won't.
Hey,
Puncher,
Puncher, I want to
here's
pose
a
a
question real
I can
quick.
assure you in 2 years from now, you will see
You can't
that
assure
it
me
has
of
not
anything. That's a
I
lie.
can.
Whatever
Yeah,
you're about to
yeah, I
say is a
can.
lie
Pu-
because you're assuring
Cuz
me about a future event that is uncertain. That's a lie.
it's
You
Puncher,
can't do that.
it's not a
Puncher, here's a
lie.
question.
It's an
Here's a question.
opinion that will happen to be right.
So
Yeah, but
Fred
then you
asked
can't assure
Fred,
me of your opinions, dude. Like this
Puncher,
is
let me
not.
ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. Fred just said Bitcoin is a peer-to-peer network. Here's my very
correct.
direct. Here's my very direct,
Peer-to-peer
and I don't think
monetary network, yes.
anyone on this space disagrees with that, right? So, Puncher, my question to you
No, I think we
is,
do
is
actually
let
disagree,
me ask
Sam.
the question. Let me ask the question. Is Cardone Capital up here? Is strategy up here? Because if you're
Is
answering that
what?
question any different,
You cut out.
it is Cardone Capital up here? Is strategy up here? How
Up
do you define
here?
up here? Well, look,
I don't.
you're measuring.
What are you trying to catch me in some word salad?
It's
What's the question, Sam?
it's a very straightforward question, Puncher. So
He's
I'm a
asking
peer.
you if you think a bank is a peer,
It's a
A
straight.
basically,
if you're
traditional
running
It's
a
a
bank?
straight.
full
or an
node, they're a
I
institution.
peer.
do not
If
think a
you're running a
traditional bank
lightning
is a
node,
peer
they're
of
a
mine.
peer.
No. The answer is no.
I didn't mention. I didn't mention bank. I asked you a direct question. Is strategy a peer? Is Cardone Capital a
What do you
peer?
mean a peer? A peer?
Uh,
They're not
Are they a
sending
peer
people
on the
Bitcoin.
network?
No, because they're not on the network. They
Of
are
what? What
sending
do you
people
mean?
paper
They have
derivatives.
wallets. What are you talking about? They have a wallet.
They're
They
not
have,
sending Bitcoin through their wallets. Their Bitcoin is ossifying in an account somewhere.
They
They
But
are
they hold
they
it.
sending
They
fiat.
hold it.
they hold it, and presumably they do
bro.
send it. I mean,
And
there's
the
people
If they're
question
running a
was
watching.
full node or if they're running a lightning node, they're a
the
peer. What's the
question.
fucking
But
problem?
most people that hold Bitcoin in cold storage aren't sending it anywhere either.
I don't
Like the
know. I
peer to
do.
peer thing.
My answer to this: look at the mempool. People aren't sending Bitcoin in general. It doesn't matter if you're a pleb or an
Exactly.
institution. The
That
mempool
is
And
a
won't.
problem.
that's why JPEGs won't kill
No,
Bitcoin.
no. Time out.
And there's
Time out.
also a
We're
free
talking
market
different things.
solution.
Look. Something cannot be a money. It's Bitcoin is in its store of value phase, which is why people are loath to get rid of it because it's a better store of value, even though we're down 60% from our all-time high or 50%. That right now. That's the phase we're in. There's very timid activity in what's the next phase of money, which we should all agree we want Bitcoin to be money, not digital capital.
Yes.
Money. Okay. So
also,
the
so doesn't that apply now?
the next
You
phase is
implied
going to
something
be
in that
medium of
statement, Puncher.
exchange. What's
You
that?
actually implied something. You implied something very important. That
I haven't implied
the
anything
way in
because you
which
interrupted me.
you, yeah, because the way in which you use Bitcoin shifts depending on its volatility and its price.
No, I
It,
didn't say that.
yeah,
I
because you
didn't say
said,
that.
well,
It has
it's a
nothing to do
better
with
store of value
volatility. It has
now.
to do with it as a store of value.
Yes, because
Nothing to do
if
with
it keeps
volatility.
going up, then it doesn't get used as a medium of exchange as extensively as it could if it starts stabilizing, right? So let's
No,
say 100 years down the
disagree.
line, that's how gold used to be. We didn't use gold as
I
a
don't know.
as
I
a.
disagree that any of that.
All
I
right.
disagree that it. I don't know what I disagree with. I was making a point that
I can
medium
give
of
you the
exchange.
hard
It's a
numbers
medium of
instead of just
exchange now.
the.
It's growing, but we're not even close. We're in the fat lady hasn't even begun to sing before the pitch in the game that starts the first inning.
Okay, let me repeat what you said just in case I didn't hear it correctly. You said it right now. Right now, at this moment, it's a better store of value. Right now, because of its trajectory.
Better than what? It
Well,
is a
better than the S
store
and
of value
P, better than the other stores of values that are out here. Right now,
yeah, over a long enough time horizon.
yes, it's a
Yes,
better store of value, and therefore,
because
people would be more incentivized to hold and not use it as a medium of exchange at this point in time.
Now, at this point in time, if they understand what it is they own, if they're not traders, if they're not buying it because Michael Saylor said something smart, if they truly understand what Bitcoin is, then no, they're confident, even though it's at 64,000, that it's the best store of value they can have right now.
Perfect.
Yes, that
So
is what I
therefore,
said.
they're not using it as a medium of stage. They're using it as a.
Some are,
I know, but the greater
some
majority,
intend to.
greater
No,
majority,
some intend
I
to.
understood. But right
Some
now, it's
intend to,
not.
just not now.
Right now, it's
That's right.
like a 401k or a Roth. You're putting your money away. You're storing it there.
Yeah, and some people, because they understand that Bitcoin must become a medium of exchange, are doing their best to live a Bitcoin standard.
All right,
There's not a
but
ton
that's
of
the
them, but there's a lot of them
you would
because
say
they
that's the
understand what
minority.
I
You would
understand.
understand that that's the minority, though. And right now, because it's
Right
a
now
better
it
store of a
is.
value, people are behaving as
Yeah, so
such.
what?
And if that changes, it becomes a medium of exchange. Therefore,
But
Bitcoin.
it must change.
I
It must
understood.
change for
I'm
Bitcoin
with
to be
you.
money.
I'm with you.
Yes.
Therefore, when you start
Yes.
moralizing and you say that, well, because the paper says it this way, that this is how it. This
Who
is
said this? Did I say
this was
this?
already said in this
Who is
discussion. I don't
moralizing?
know. I don't know whether it was you or
It wasn't
Frank,
me.
but somebody mentioned the
So
white paper.
I can't
It's
defend
like a
other people who want
peer-to-peer
me.
monetary. Like somebody was
Jimmy,
like
you
repeating.
understand I can't
Hey,
defend
puncher,
you
punch.
understand I can't defend other people.
Yeah, but puncher. Let me ask
Yes.
you. So explain to me, why does it have to become a? And I'm not being hostile.
Yeah,
I'm.
yeah, of course.
Why does it have to become a medium of exchange?
Because then
You're
it won't
saying.
be money. Because then it
You're
will
saying.
never be money. Yeah. Remember, the underlying premise, Grant, is that for Bitcoin to succeed, it must succeed as a separate monetary network. It must necessarily be money, not digital capital,
But
not
that
a
doesn't.
store of
That,
value
So
only.
that doesn't necessarily mean that. I mean, at that point, is everything else failed? It's another.
Bitcoin fails, yes. Bitcoin fails at becoming money.
No.
It'll be something else, but it ain't money.
Uh-huh.
so is it
There,
not money yet?
Well, Puncher, I mean, I would say
It's
that
it's
the way in
becoming
which we
money.
treat the way in which we treat Bitcoin is happening on an individual basis. So Bitcoin globally might not be considered to be money, but to me, it's definitely money, right? I've used it as such
Yeah, of
and
course.
prefer to
Every
use it as money over other things, right? And I
yes.
think that that's something that happens at an individual level, one person at a time, which is why it's slow, right? It's a slow burn.
Well,
Gradually you're getting more and more people who are realizing it's better
that's right.
money, and then
And then we get
suddenly,
into Malcolm
maybe it
Gladwell's
all
tipping point. Yeah.
it all
We're the
accelerates,
3%.
right?
We're the 3%. We're the 3% that convince everybody that they're the
Right.
annoying bastards that are constant. We're ENTP, INTP, and we are so annoying, we convince our family and friends and others, and that gets to 10%. And once you get to 10% of a population moving in a certain direction, the other 90%, which are essentially sheep, fall like, fall like sheep. It happens very rapidly.
Right.
So
And you have
that,
to kind of bridge the technological gap along the way, because, Bitcoin couldn't have supported billions of people in the past, and it probably can't even support billions of people now if you were to do it in a trust minimized way. Now, it could definitely support billions if people are just using custodial solutions, but that's not really where we want to end up. Um, but I mean, regardless, I actually have a problem with the framing that, like Bitcoin fails if it just stops at the store of value. And I think largely in part because uh, even as a store of value, I think the TAM of Bitcoin is, in the tens, if not hundreds of trillions of dollars. So it would be extremely valuable if it reached its
I'm not
full
saying it's not
store of value
valuable. I'm just saying
potential, right?
it's not definitionally money.
But well, I mean, I
By
think
definition,
again,
it's not an opinion. Money has to be a store of
again,
value, a medium of
you're
exchange, and a
saying
unit of
you're
account.
saying globally it wouldn't be
No, I'm
treated by
saying,
everybody as such,
no, I'm
but
not saying that. I'm not saying.
individually,
I'm not saying
right? I
that
mean,
way,
I'm
Jimmy. I'm
already
not saying that.
treating Bitcoin as money, and it's worth $65,000 a coin. Just because it
Well,
goes up to $1 million a
one
coin,
Bitcoin. It's worth one Bitcoin. So
well,
you don't have it
I'm
as a
just
unit of account yet. So you're really
listen.
not on a Bitcoin standard.
Brother, I'm I've been banging the table of the Bitcoin as a unit of account for probably longer than you've held
Well,
Bitcoin.
that comes third, not second, in a monetary
Uh,
evolution.
for me, actually, unit of account came first, because I started to measure my own net worth in terms of Bitcoin before I even had, well, after I had gotten wrecked and had $0, zero Bitcoin, had to build from again. So I didn't even have Bitcoin when I actually started using it as a unit of account, right? And it was only after I started accumulating more of it as a store of value that I
Well, what
then started
I
spending
agree
it
with
as a
you that
medium of exchange.
unit
So
of
I mean,
account.
the ordering doesn't necessarily have to
No,
go in
it
any
does. It
particular
actually
order, right?
does.
There's plenty of
No,
no,
you
there's
No, no,
can't
plenty
say
of
that
people
Wicked.
the
have used
ordering
no,
No,
there's
unit
Wicked.
of
plenty
account.
of people who have
Wicked. No,
used
no.
it as a medium of exchange prior
Oh,
to using it as a store of value, right? There's thousands, and that's just a fact. You can't argue with
I
that.
mean,
wait,
I
no, no,
wicked,
time out.
wicked. My
Hang on. Wait, just one thing, guys. Hang on one thing. Wicked. If you have no money, but you're denominating your life in sats, but you have none, it's kind of a pointless exercise, right? You
No,
can't use
not
it
at
as a
all,
medium
because
of exchange. If
I
you
have
start to,
goals. I have goals and I say I want to have a net worth of X amount of Bitcoin. I may not have any now, but I'm definitely going to start stacking and trying to get to that goal and using it as a store of value, but in anticipation
you'd
of
be the
trying to
rare
reach a
exception.
certain amount. No, I know I am, which is why I've been banging the
There's people
table and
who've been
telling
in
everyone
Bitcoin.
this is probably the way you should look at it because you are going to be much more laser focused on building a stack, up to a certain amount if you're actually denominating your net worth in terms of Bitcoin.
I'm the same
But
as
but
Wicked, by
oddly,
the way,
but
Puncher.
oddly, but
I'm the
oddly,
same.
Tom. Yeah, but Wicked, you denominated. You were the one who denominated your net worth to me 30 seconds ago in dollars, not in Bitcoin. You said it's worth $64,000. I said, well, actually, it's worth one Bitcoin.
All
You
right,
said that.
but listen, Puncher, the value
I'm
of
just pointing
Bitcoin
out that you're
fluctuates.
not
If I
really
if I just start
denominating your
saying
life in Bitcoin.
Bitcoin, if I say it's one Bitcoin today, and if it's worth one Bitcoin in 20 years, there's not really like a measurable value stick at the moment because
Yeah, but
Bitcoin's
I
value
know
is
Wicked, but that
fluctuating so
makes it
wildly.
hard for me to believe that your story's
well,
true,
how many pounds of
right?
copper could you buy with it?
Wicked, it
Puncher,
makes me hard to
I
believe
don't
that your
care if you believe
story
me
is
or not.
true if
I
you
don't
are
care if you believe me or not. There's
no, no,
plenty of
no,
people on this app who've been following me long
it's
enough to know
odd.
that I've been denominating my net
They're
worth in
not
terms
in
of
your
Bitcoin
head.
for a very long time.
They're not.
I
Did
built
they
a
know you
tool for
before you
that,
had
by the
any?
way. I built a
Did they
tool
know you
for
before
that,
you
and
had
met
Bitcoin,
you
but
can
you were
use it.
denominating your life in
Toshi
Bitcoin?
in
Hey,
'93 with
I
Wicked,
Bitcoin,
was.
so
what's
you
the
don't worry.
tool? Put it in the nest. Whatever you have the tool, put it in the nest.
All right.
Sure, it's
But
just
anyway,
it's a net worth tracker.
I
Wicked.
didn't
I
get
think
to
another.
medium of exchange, then unit of account. If that's not any of those three things over time, I can't tell you the timeline. It's not a monetary network, and it's not money. Period. It's
At what
something else.
threshold does it have to reach that from a population standpoint? Because again, I mean, I'm having trouble understanding if
The problem is that
if
the
there's
tier
a
one
million people
blockchain
using it as all
will not
three, is it
scale.
money, or does it have to be like a billion?
It
Like
is for
what's your
them. It
threshold?
is for them, but it's not the dominating monetary network in the globe, right?
Okay, so you're saying that
I could take you
as a
down to
dominating monetary network, it has to have all three amongst maybe the economic majority. That's what you're saying.
it's like any power law. It take over time it evolves and different people, because we're all individuals, or different communities or different countries are all at different stages, but we're all moving in the same direction toward a global new monetary network called Bitcoin. Yes.
Do you think it's possible for it to be the global monetary, like the number one network everybody uses? You think it's possible?
I think it's
100%.
my base case. Yes. If it's
I think
not,
it's
then it's
possible
failed.
for
Hey,
I
I
think
just
it's
want to throw
possible for
something
No,
out
everyone to be
there.
using it as a unit
it
of
hasn't
account.
failed if it
Hold on.
Can I
hasn't
give like
failed
concrete
if it
answers,
doesn't
because this is
achieve
a lot
that.
of like
Here's
brain rot right now.
Well, no,
So,
look, my perspective is Bitcoin is optionality and it's a tool for the individual. So it is already something that is helpful in my life today, from protection from debasement or censorship resistance or what other aspects that Bitcoin can provide me as an individual. It is already succeeding in being
Nobody says
something that is helpful in my life today.
nobody
I don't
says
need
it's
it to
not.
become okay,
But
but
that
I
has
don't
nothing to
need.
do with what we're talking about. Nothing.
Yeah, but Puncher, I'm responding to your
can I?
point that Bitcoin has failed if it doesn't become the number one global monetary
Yes,
network in
no,
the
over
world. To me,
time.
I'm
What
not
would
Of
looking
no
course
for
it
that in
failed.
order
Wicked,
for it to
The
what
number
would
succeed.
one
What
token
I
then
am
you're
network
looking
you
for
should
what
set
it
your
can
bar
do for
higher
me
for Bitcoin.
today. That's what
Okay,
it
well then
is.
all right, well then you got very high time preference actually.
Let
Thank
me
you for saying so.
It's
Hey,
can I
no,
say
I
something
want
real
to point
quick?
out
no,
one thing.
I don't.
The I
You
think
just said you
but
do.
you have
the
for
whole
sure.
it
I mean,
fails
if
as
Guys,
money
It is
derives.
already help.
all right, guys, we gotta do one at a time here. Hands or something. Okay. Portland, you got your hand up. Go ahead, Portland.
Yes, I would like to state, in my base case, personally, I used Bitcoin as a medium of exchange first, then store of value second. But that use case actually became because of the number of merchants that I interacted with on an online basis, right?
Were you buying drugs online? That's probably what we were talking
I'm
about,
not
right?
admitting. I'm not admitting to anything. But
Well, I
I'm
know
just saying,
that's what
back
you're
in
talking
2000.
about. That's the odd
No,
circumstance
no,
where
no,
you
no.
would use that as a medium of
Puncher,
exchange, because
shut
that's
the
all they
fuck up.
Puncher,
that's
please
all they took.
let me finish.
Seriously,
That's all they took.
Puncher,
This is
No,
slop.
seriously, let me finish,
Puncher, shut
please.
the fuck up.
Okay, I
Who
would
is it
buy
telling me to shut the fuck
games.
up? Who's telling me to shut the fuck up?
Can
Who do you think is
Wicked
I
telling you
please
to
did.
shut
finish?
the fuck up?
Fuck you,
I'm glad he
Wicked.
said
Give
it,
a
Puncher,
fuck, punk.
honestly.
Whatever.
Okay,
Put you
I
up my
just want to
fucking
state.
knee, you faggot.
Can,
Oh, here we
okay,
go. Here we go.
let me
Puncher
finish.
crash out incoming.
I'm perfectly fine. Just don't tell me to shut up.
Okay,
I
can
thought
I
we're
can
not
I
supposed to
can I
use bad
finish
words,
real quick?
Puncher. I hear you complain about that in Bitcoin today all
I
the
never
time
said
about
that.
people
Who said
being
that?
mean to you. Yeah, oh yeah,
I
Shinobi calls you a
complained about people
retard and it's
being
so
mean to
fucking
me.
annoying.
I complain about people
But
being
it's
mean to
only
me. You
but
got
Now
it,
you're
but
you
it's
got
threatening
only
people, dude.
you got the wrong
Now
guy.
you're
it's only
fucking
one
you're physically
it's
threatening
Oh,
people. Come on,
it's
man,
Jesus.
we're
only
having a
one
Oh,
side.
conversation.
man. Poor baby.
It's only
Oh,
one
poor
side that
baby.
throws names around, right, Puncher? It's only one side that does that. Isn't that what you told me earlier? That
Can I
it's
just
only
finish
one
my statement? Can I
that it's
please
only
just
one
finish real quick?
side that
No,
name
I just
calls.
did it. I just did it because you told
Hey
me
guys,
to
we're
shut
all.
up.
I got
How about that?
17 hands up. Portland, finish your statement.
Yeah,
Portland.
I bought things from Microsoft, Newegg, Steam. Like I was buying stuff all the time with Bitcoin from individuals, even local marketplaces. People would take it in 2013 on chain, just pay for it. That doesn't happen as much anymore. And I know we have more Lightning integration, but I don't feel like it's being used as a money in an easier fashion by any means. I want to be able to purchase
At least
things
not in the
with
States.
Bitcoin. Yeah, not in the States, and that's my opinion. But yeah, to make Bitcoin money, make more people, or don't make people, but have more merchants accept it from just like,
Okay,
hey, can
let's
I
say,
just
hey,
go?
I want to have Dave talk a little bit because I want Dave to talk. He's the one guy on the stage who actually knows a lot about Lightning. Not that I don't know something about Lightning, ran a Lightning node and so on, but I don't know anything about ARC really, to be honest. And I'd like to get the update from Dave as to where's ARC, and where's Lightning today. How can I move like 10 grand on Lightning pretty easily? What's the limits on this thing right now?
So there's a metric called max flow, which tells you so how likely is it for you to make a certain sized payment on Lightning at any time with like a 90% success rate? Like how big of a payment could you make, right? And like 5 years ago, that was like 20. Like the average transaction on Lightning was like $20. Today it's like $500.
500. Yeah. I kind of know that if I try to
You
do
can
100
still
or
make
1,000
thousands of
Lightning
dollars
every
of
day.
payments though.
Yeah,
Like
there was $1 million
Shut
Lightning
up, Wicked.
payment through
yeah.
companies, so it's possible, but you need to have a channel for that, which is custom, right? But the hard stats are that Lightning is growing it
How
grew
about
by
ARC?
100x.
How about
So,
ARC?
but
What
I'll
is
just give you
the
the figures for Lightning so people understand the payment volumes that we see currently. So, Lightning grew from $12 million per month in 2021 to $1.2 billion per month in 2025. And after that, we had the Square rollout to 1 million merchants in the US. So we haven't seen the figures since then, the updated figures. So that's a 100x increase in a peer-to-peer network. Like we usually think about the layer one network as a peer-to-peer network. I mean, it's peer-to-peer nodes agreeing on a blockchain and like a series of transactions, right? But Lightning is actually peer-to-peer, where you have these channels where you need to lock capital, right? Which is a lot more difficult. It's like building out a telephone network. It takes a lot of time, and you need to actually commit capital to a server somewhere, which is obviously an opportunity cost and a risk. And this is very relevant for like people like Grant. Like if you run a treasury company, this is how you earn a rent on your Bitcoin. And yield is a bad word in Bitcoin. BlockFi, Celsius, and all this BS. But and the yields are today very small. But
Dave,
like,
what do you does for a guy like Grant who's got a bunch of quite a
yeah,
few Bitcoin now, right, in his treasury company, in his real estate treasury company? Is there an opportunity for him to kind of make yield without, basically in a complete trust minimized way on Lightning right now? And how much could he make realistically, and on what volume?
yeah, for sure. I mean, the yields are obviously nominally small today. Like the market is quite small, but the idea is that you deploy today and you're buying topology, right? So on Lightning, the earlier you deploy in a scaling network, like I'm expecting Lightning to be bigger than Visa in 8 years, right? that sounds crazy, but if you look at the stats, that's actually highly likely. And if you deploy your Bitcoin today, you're buying a position which cannot really be easily replaced. It's like any airport or a telecom company starting early, right?
Well, that's a look.
And
The
just to
only
give
thing
you
I
some
will
numbers,
say is
like
the
filling a
narrative
channel.
of this Bitcoin treasury companies has eclipsed the narrative of Lightning and everything else. You know, it's just over the last 2 years we've stopped talking about this stuff, and only thing we're talking about is MNAV.
Yeah, dude, like you should see my face at these conferences. Like I'm cringing every time. And there are a lot of good people in the space that really want to do good, but they've been captured by this digital credit play and all that kind of stuff, which is just mere speculation on cost of capital versus price appreciation and making bets on that. This is actual infrastructure, and it's pretty cool because it only takes like one treasury company to commit to kind of double the capacity on Lightning, which is kind of crazy. So yeah, and Arc is now live. So Second, the CEO kind of roasted me yesterday of Second, which has done Arc implementation because of BIP 110. But anyways, Arc kind of, if you think about Lightning as fiber internet, Arc is mobile network internet, right? So it allows like any end user to access the internet, like the internet of money in this case, much easier than having to run Lightning channels. So that's why Lightning has kind of this long adoption curve, because it's kind of like starting your own ISP. If you're a business that want to receive Lightning payments or send payments, it's kind of like you have to start your own ISP. You have to become AT&T to receive payments, which is kind of crazy.
Exactly. Puncher, you got your hand up. Go ahead. Punch. Punch. Okay, Sam, go ahead. All right. Anand, go ahead.
Yeah, I came a little bit late, but my concern around the whole kind of fiat adjacent treasury company thing is that it brings in a lot of fiat bad habits that I want to discourage. I'm not here to say that they shouldn't own Bitcoin or they can't own Bitcoin or anything like that. But I don't want them to have the focus of the marketing around Bitcoin. I don't want them to be the cheerleaders for Bitcoin that everyone goes to because they're going to continue promoting those things. When it comes to Lightning, I think Lightning is great, but I think it has a lot of problems for people that want to use it to build. Like I synced and set up a Lightning node last month, and it was a pain in the ass. Setting up channels and balancing channels is a pain in the ass, and it's not something the layman is ever going to do. And it got such a pain in the ass with the HODL invoices I was trying to use that I ended up switching to Liquid. Right. So that's a problem, and I'm sure that'll get sorted out. But I don't want these stable coins that the Treasury codes seem to be aligned with and promoting, taking all that liquidity and taking up all those payments instead, because I see that as a way that Bitcoin doesn't become irrelevant, but gets weakened to the point where they never become that payment source, right?
Then how do you reconcile that the only way that most of us value Bitcoin is denominated in fiat?
I
It's
don't
like,
really care right now. If there's
but
an adoption
do,
curve, and once it's worth more than everything else, that's when we're going to start
do you
denominating everything
but
else
do you
to Bitcoin.
understand
But we don't.
do you understand the quagmire that you're like it's like it's this idea that it's a zero sum game, that like both things can't coexist, one thing is
No, I
dirty
don't buy that either. I
because
don't.
we
I don't think there's
accept.
never going to be real estate, and there's never going to be derivatives, and there's never going to be real estate or art. Of course, there is.
When
My
someone is
point is that
selling
we want
Bitcoin,
it to
what do
be.
they accept for it?
I'm sorry.
When someone is selling Bitcoin, what are they accepting for it?
It depends on what it's denominated. What country are they in? I don't know.
It's fiat.
Sure.
Not
Right
always. I
now,
mean, sometimes people sell
Yeah,
Bitcoin
but
for stakes.
99% of the time it's fiat.
No, oh, I
Now,
mean,
okay.
yes,
by
now.
by
But
pure
what's the point?
volume or by transactions, because I think there's actually quite a few actual medium of exchange transactions happening denominated in Bitcoin worldwide, right? You might not be aware of kind of the movements happening in other places of the world, but I mean, there's thousands of transactions happening, you know, every minute on Lightning, right?
I think, we tend to push back on the Bitcoin treasury or like the suit coiners or whatever when like their behavior, all their behavior is validating what we say Bitcoin is. And if Bitcoin is money, they're going to treat it as such. If it is an asset of value, they're going to treat it as such. And so, like, I don't know why we keep saying, well, we got to distance ourselves from that. We can't, we got to ostracize these guys. We got to talk down on them. It's like, what? It's
Jimmy,
we spent damn near a decade telling the world that Bitcoin is the hardest fucking asset on the fucking face of the planet, and then get mad that, that the finance bros showed up.
Jimmy, that is the
Sort of
difference, though, right?
retarded.
If you think it's the
No,
hardest
it's not
asset
that.
on the planet, then we disagree. I think it's the best monetary protocol that mankind has ever seen that ensures fairness and all kinds of other wonderful things. But if it's just the hardest asset, it's not money. It's not that protocol. It
He
is
didn't.
not
He
what you
didn't. He
think it
didn't say
is.
it's just the hardest asset. I mean, that's just one aspect of what it might be considered, though.
Okay, well, okay, fine. Is it a monetary protocol or is it not? Because if it ossifies
Of course,
in
it's a
not
monetary
moving
protocol.
accounts,
No,
if it
no one's
ossifies and
arguing that.
doesn't move as a medium of exchange, let me ask you this. If in 10, 15, in 15 years, let's say 20, you walk into a store and they're denominating things in dollars, would you say that Bitcoin was a success?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, there's where we disagree. And I prefer clarity to agreement. I prefer artificial, respectful truth over artificial harmony. I do not believe that that's what Bitcoin is, or it would have not failed. It just didn't work. It's a hard asset. Somebody's probably leveraged against it, but that is a fiat system 20 years from now. Bitcoin.
I'll be very surprised if in 15 to 20 years we don't see, at
It,
the very least, Bitcoin prices alongside dollar prices at most merchants. To be honest,
I
I
Yeah,
think
think
we
you'll
I
already
think
get
we'll
have
see,
that in
at the
Square
very
case.
least both options with a toggle, and there
If
might be
you pay a
some that
Square
actually
merchant,
prefer
they
Bitcoin.
can they can decide to receive in dollars or Bitcoin, right? So that's we
Yeah.
already see that.
Which, by the way, that UX is fucking dope. I don't know if you guys have experienced it, but it's so nice to go to a merchant and just press a toggle and not have to announce to the world, "Hey, can I pay in Bitcoin?" and then have them stumble over like, "Oh, I don't know how to do it." Right? The fact that you can just do it yourself, you toggle it, you fucking pay the invoice, bada bing, bada boom. You get your fucking taco or whatever you're buying. It's pretty dope.
Wicked, do
Can
you
I
think
touch
with
on
AI
something
using
about
Bitcoin?
you know, I think the thought of Bitcoin fails if it doesn't become a medium of exchange. Doesn't that derive from like down the road when the block subsidy gets so small that if it's not being used on the base layer, that there won't be any way to secure the network with the fees? I think that's
Well,
where that
It
thought came
derives
from.
from the fact that
No.
once you have mass adoption, there will be such congestion on layer one that you won't be able to onboard users. So that's why you need a second layer, which is Lightning, and Lightning needs a third layer, which is Arc. So you need these layers to onboard people to the satoshis, right?
Wait, but that
And
won't be the
then I
catalyst
also
for the
wanted
medium
to
of
say,
exchange, though. But
I
so
use Bitcoin. I use Bitcoin as a medium of exchange, like at least a handful of times every single month, and that's not shown in the block, obviously, because I go to Square, I'll swing by Steak and Shake or wherever, or if I see a Square merchant that's not on the map, I'll ask them to turn it on. I've even had them flip the tablet around and turned it on for them, and then watch their face light up when I have the invoice created. So, like, I think Bitcoin is actually being used as a medium of exchange more than people realize, in my
hey,
opinion.
Satoshi, I got a question for you. You said that, and I don't want to misquote you, but you said if if what's the catalyst that's going to change it to a medium of exchange? Like the block reward gets so small that I don't think that's has anything to do with it. Like just suppose the dollar hyperinflated tomorrow. What do you think? What monetary system, very quickly, do you think people would gravitate toward? Or I'll give you another example. In Ukraine in 2022, I think that's when Russia, February or March of 2022, I was working with a development team. I had some developers working for us in Ukraine. The war kicked off. We couldn't get, the banks were closed. Obviously, the currency, the paper currency had evaporated, and we couldn't get them out. So we ended up sending them Bitcoin. And very quickly in Ukraine, during that time, Bitcoin became the unit of account. You were transacting in Bitcoin. You wanted to bribe a border guard to get across into Poland, you did it with Bitcoin. So very quickly, they went from everything's normal to holy shit, we're on a Bitcoin standard. So I don't think it has anything to do with monetary rewards and block rewards.
No, I'm saying people say, like, who said that earlier? I think Jimmy did. He said if Bitcoin doesn't become a medium of exchange, it'll eventually fail. And the reason
I
for
didn't
that
say that. That
saying
wasn't
is
me.
because,
That wasn't me. So.
well, who somebody said that,
No, I
That
right?
was
said
Like if
that
it
Puncher.
doesn't
if it
end up
doesn't,
if
it
it doesn't
fails.
end up becoming money as a medium of exchange on the base layer, it's doomed to fail.
No, I didn't say
And
the base
I've
layer.
heard that
I
before
didn't say the
too. And
base
that
layer. I did not say the base layer. It's settle if it's on Lightning or Liquid and it settles to the base layer, that's fine. What I don't want is stable coins and USDT circulating through the Bitcoin network because some Frankenstein's monster has occurred and we've tried to integrate the fiat system with the Bitcoin system. And what we ended getting was a Rube Goldberg fucking piece of shit. That's what I'm
Hey,
concerned about.
You
Puncher. I
shouldn't
think
conflate liquid with lightning, so it's quite different,
I
right?
know.
So
I'm sorry.
just if you're in the clips.
Sorry.
Puncher. I would say I would just push back on that a little bit. I mean, I agree that having Bitcoin, or sorry, having fiat stable coins on Bitcoin can be dangerous if they get a large market share of value and then have an outsized amount of influence on the network. So I agree with that, and I think that that's already happened on many other shit coins. Like Tether basically owns Tron, and Tether has a large amount of influence on Ethereum, for example. But the benefit of having it directly on Bitcoin is you do open the on ramps into Bitcoin in the event of a catastrophic fiat failure. And so you have kind of an easier way in for people who, the light bulb goes off and now they don't have to wait for their legacy financial rails to swap it into Bitcoin. They have a direct.
That call bullshit.
No, but that's transitional though, Wicked, right?
Right,
That
right.
wouldn't
I
even
But
would
work.
accept
that's
that as a
literally where we are
transition.
right now, right? We're literally in the
Okay.
transition into hyper Bitcoinization. So those
Wicked.
rails need to be
You think the U.S. if there's catastrophe, you think the U.S. government will allow Tether to just
if
let
the if
people
the
freely
if
flow
the
out of Tether?
dollar is in free fall or people are exiting fiat, then I mean they're going to try to close down all the off ramps and on ramps, right? Off ramps out of fiat and on ramps into Bitcoin. But
Yeah, I don't think. See, like, I don't think
what I'm
in that
saying
world, I
is
don't think
that,
you'd be able to go to sideship and peg out. Like, I don't
well,
think you'll be able to
in
do that.
the moment that it is happening, because it's not going to happen in an instant, you will have some time to move. And if you're
Right.
already
Yeah,
in
maybe in the very
stables,
beginning. Yeah,
if you're already in stables, it will be easier to move into Bitcoin in that brief period of time as it's collapsing than if you're in a
very,
bank.
Hey,
very,
Wicked,
very.
if stable coins are running through the Bitcoin network, and we know for a fact that stable coins can be canceled and stolen, how does that system work together? Like, I'm doing a transaction which includes Bitcoin and a stable coin, and then all of a sudden, Uncle Sam says, boom, poof, gone. What does
Well,
that do to the network?
it is a hot potato. I'm not arguing that, right? Fiat itself is designed to be a hot potato. It's literally by design what it is.
That's why I said we don't
Um,
want it in. We don't want it in and
but
around this.
but I think, I
Okay.
mean, I think you want as many on ramps as possible to try to suck in as much liquidity as
For
possible and
sure.
pump this bitch up to the moon, right?
On ramps for sure, but not
Hmm.
integrated into the system.
Question: How do
When
we have
everything's
stable coins on
integrated
Bitcoin?
into the system, I mean, Puncher, like all the on ramps are integrated into the system. How do
So,
you
hold
think
on.
people
Yeah,
get
Let's.
and
I
they
think.
all
Bitcoin?
have
I know the on ramps are.
channels.
I know the on ramps are.
Wait,
Hmm.
but hold on. There's no tether. No, there's no stable coins getting integrated on layer one Bitcoin. That's impossible.
Yeah, they are.
Exactly. There's no
They're in
stable.
RGB. I mean,
No,
they're
RGB. That's not layer
you're
one.
well,
That's
That's lightning.
Or layer
no,
two. I
you're
don't want it.
minting them. You're minting them in a layer one transaction, but then they can be moved on Lightning. I mean, it's the same thing as a channel, right? It's
All right,
based
but how does
on a
that
layer
work?
one.
How do they? All right, well then
Are you asking
Tether's on.
how RGB works?
No. I'm asking you how Tether is going to be able to mint Tether on
You
Bitcoin when fees are going
you
up.
well, because it's
It
not very
literally
fee
costs you.
sensitive, right? It scales. You can mint billions of Tether for one
Yeah,
on
right. But
chain
yeah, but the
transaction
Bitcoin
and then
blockchain
move it
doesn't
into
do that.
Lightning.
Dude, hold on,
Wait,
Wicked.
Wicked, real quick though. when I let's say I do one of these RGB transactions to create this the stablecoin on Bitcoin.
The asset. Yeah.
Sure, asset in this case. Like, where does who's doing the accounting? Where's all the accounting of like who's moving it to where if my funds are stolen?
Well, that doesn't. I mean, if your funds are stolen, hey, there's you know how this shit works.
Sure,
There's
like
no
I'm
fucking
just saying,
clawbacks.
No, on Bitcoin main chain, absolutely not. But like, where's the accounting happening? Do I have to, like, for example, let's say I turn it into the stable coin. Do I have to make a Bitcoin transaction to move that stable coin I just created on Bitcoin, or is it happening off?
Stable coins made out of Fugazi.
It's not going to work.
That's a serious question.
Same way that you
This is all a bunch of marketing
Portland,
bullshit. It's not going to work.
That's not true, Mr. Hall. It's the same way that you move any other, digital asset on Bitcoin, whether or not you think that's retarded, which I agree, it's retarded.
No. But Tether's moving. Tether's doing how much transaction? Like, what type of transactions are Tether doing? They will clog up Bitcoin's chain. If all of a sudden all volume moves onto the Bitcoin blockchain, does that
Mr. Huddle, you're misunderstanding this. It's going to be people. It's going to be the issuers of Tether who are doing, periodic, relatively small amounts of on-chain transactions to mint, however many billions of dollars of Tether people have demand for.
They don't mint all the time.
Right. They'll do large mints, and then they'll move a lot of that Tether into Lightning, right? Presumably, where it will be spent as a stable. Right.
Yeah. So whatever. It's not a big deal.
But Wicked, if
and by the way, this is already happening.
Venezuela,
right? I mean,
or in Iran.
Waldo Satoshi just integrated.
Yeah, I saw that.
This is already happening on Lightning.
Yeah, but Wicked, if they cancel these USDT and stablecoins, like they have, like we shut down Ukraine, we shut down Russia, we shut
Iran's,
down Russia's reserve. Iran's, Venezuela's. If we do that, why would anyone ever accept a stablecoin on the network ever again?
Well, I mean, some people don't think they'll ever be targeted because they're not Iranian. So they're just going to continue using it because they like the stability of it. But if they are stolen from, then that's a big, huge advertisement for, should have just held Bitcoin. And so I think it's all good for Bitcoin.
Yeah, forget about the people who got stolen from. It is the world's dollarizing.
Listen, Puncher. Not everyone's going to make it here, man. Some people are going to get wrecked, and then hopefully they learn from it.
Wicked, to define this. Wicked, to define this clearly, USDT on Bitcoin through RGB is a meta protocol, correct? Like the actual Bitcoin network is not doing any of the accounting for who owns what. That's all happening on top of Bitcoin. Is that correct or wrong?
That's correct.
Okay, there we go. Okay, answers my question. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's either going to use RGB or Taproot assets, or
you could do runes, couldn't you? Like you could do any meta protocol.
You could do whatever one you want.
You could just start issuing.
I think that Tether has.
Why does the accounting matter when they can just print them out of thin air? Why does it matter?
No,
what accounting do you need to do?
I mean, it's private and it uses onion routing and it's fine. Like, we don't have to complicate things.
Yeah, I mean, as a matter of fact, when you're using Lightning for, transferring Bitcoin or any other asset that you've minted on top of that network, it's superior, I think, as a payments layer.
Let's keep that. We should keep that private. We should keep that quiet. We shouldn't really advertise too much the privacy
aspects of it.
Yeah.
The good news is everyone's going to be using Spark, which isn't really that private, and so the state's going to have a stranglehold on that aspect of it.
Nobody's going to use Spark, but yeah.
I think most people are going to be using Spark and already kind of are. I mean, the proof's in the pudding. Like, just look at the
legal arbitrage. That's because that's legal arbitrage. That's not because it's a better technology.
No, it's not a better technology. I mean, especially when you're considering the fact that it's it's custodial, right? Like, you are trusting that they're not going to rug you.
They were banned in the EU, so they had to jump on it.
Right.
Because it's better technology.
I agree. But
and you're trusting them forever, and it's not going to work.
Well, listen, I think regulatory
on the growth of Bitcoin, things that don't work in the long term, and then they raise VC capital, and then they celebrate. It happens all the time.
Yeah, but at the same time, the people are retarded, right? And people can stay retarded longer than you can stay solvent. And so I think
AI can't though. Do you think AI bot? Do you think an AI
I think
bot
most people
realizes that a stable coin?
Most people don't worry about.
Do you think an AI bot would?
Well, listen.
I'm not worried about what people are worried about. I'm asking you a question. If do you think an AI bot is going to think that it's a good idea doing microtransactions in USDT or Bitcoin?
I don't think it'll really care because you'll be able to swap between the two.
Well, I ask it. I have. It says
Puncher, I think
You're,
very
it's not going to
clearly
be the AI
they're
bot.
going to
It's going to
do
be
it.
the owner of the AI
I've,
bot,
I've
and
asked
he'll
it.
It's
decide what he
but
wants.
No. Well, look, they're gonna
You've
then they
asked
can
it.
get
That's
canceled, and they're
funny.
taking unnecessary counterparty risk. They're taking way too much counterparty risk when they don't
Uh,
need to.
Yeah,
So
but
your
so
AI is
it's
going to turn
not.
to you and go, "Don't be a fucking idiot. Don't do that. That's stupid.
I
Don't do that."
Like the energy that you guys are putting into stablecoins and stuff, you should just put it into ARK instead, because that's the front lines of Bitcoin right now.
mean, there's
Everybody should study
No,
it.
the
it's
whole
probably going to
point
be
is
stable coins on ARC
going back
too.
to my original statement. These two systems are incompatible. Some people don't think that. That's the major difference here. I don't think Saylor thinks the systems are incompatible. And then you talk to Jeff Booth and myself and other people. I think they are. And that's the difference. Period.
I don't
So
like
I
it
think
either. What are we going to do about it?
fiat's great. I mean, we can use fiat until we bridge
It
to
doesn't matter
lightning.
if
You
you
don't have
like
to
it or
have
not.
like a third thing in between. Like we can go
Yeah, but
complete
right. So
like
what's the plan?
the free market solves this. Am I correct? Like over time,
Yeah,
the
one
dollars
goes
become
to zero,
worthless, and then
one goes to
Bitcoin.
infinity.
Yeah,
As long as the Bitcoin network remains a money that's decentralized and secure. Yes.
Puncher.
That's why everybody's crazy about this stuff, guys.
Okay, so Puncher, my question is, what does Bitcoin need to do in your eyes to make it a money? And it, like, I'm talking like, remember, Bitcoin has enemies too. Bitcoin has enemies. How are you going to make people only use Bitcoin as money? Like, what's your solution here? Because it's permissionless.
I think it's called Thieves' Law. I think it's called Thieves' Law or whatever. Look, a thinking human being seeks more value and seeks the perfect money. Bitcoin is more perfect than the current system. Therefore,
Absolutely.
you must believe that the average person is going to seek the value, which is Bitcoin, right?
So do you think Bitcoin
So,
needs any changes?
Bitcoin,
Oh, sorry.
well, it needs maintenance. I'll tell you that. Yes, it does, or else we wouldn't have a core dev team. We wouldn't have a dev team if it didn't.
Okay. So you're
Okay,
to
so
make
you
Bitcoin
asked
better
me a
money,
question.
you get rid of
Let's
core.
stop. We're going on these segues. Let me answer your original
Okay.
question before I get the next 15. Okay, so right now, the progress of any money throughout all of human history starts as a store of value, gold. Then it becomes a medium of exchange, gold. And then it becomes a unit of account for a time, gold. And then because gold had certain properties that didn't make it a good money, portability, divisibility, and a couple others, somebody said, hey, let's make some paper instead, and we'll back it by gold. We'll put the gold in the vault, and we'll write you these little certificates, and then you can trade these certificates. And we swear on a stack of Bibles that we're going to have every certificate is backed by one thing of gold. And then one day, one guy got a harebrained idea and said, you know what? Not everybody's going to come for their gold. Why don't we issue more certificates than we have as gold? And that's how you got
Rehypothecation.
fiat and all the corruption. That's exactly right. And if Bitcoin, which if it stays a store of value like gold was in my example, and it doesn't move as money, that's how we got fiat. That's how we're going to get fiat things built on top of Bitcoin, stupidly, if we don't know fucking economics here and what is money.
But you can't
If it
stop
doesn't
somebody.
become a medium of
Okay.
exchange, it's not money. And it sure shit isn't a unit of
All right,
account.
but we can't stop Tether from issuing.
Let's go to some
Can I
hands. Let's go to some
can
hands here. And Portland, you can respond, and then let's go to Dave and Anon.
I just want to respond. So I guess then, since the question wasn't answered, would you change anything about Bitcoin to make it a better money? Do you think the act of making Bitcoin a medium of exchange is more so a software problem, or do you think it is a human problem?
No.
Okay.
No. Bitcoin, as long as somebody doesn't fuck it up and maybe like weigh it down so that it can only be a store of value because it's carrying a ton of shit on it that doesn't belong in a monetary network, then it will necessarily can't move as money because it's too fucking slow. And it'll become like gold, and then it won't be money, and then it won't be Bitcoin, and then we'll be stuck in the same fucking fiat system for my kids and your great grandkids because we fucked it up. That's the big deal here.
All right, let's go to the other hands. If you guys have things to add to this conversation, Dave.
Yeah, I can answer that question if it's a human problem. It's definitely a human problem right now, because when people like Grant and Gary and then treasury executives, like actual business people, actually understand that they can earn a rent on their Bitcoin by deploying it on Lightning, you're going to have a much better infrastructure setup, because currently there is 1.3 million Bitcoin in like cold storage solutions with treasury companies, and you have 5,000 Bitcoin in Lightning. So it's quite a discrepancy there. And so as long as you have business people in Bitcoin realize that they can actually turn it into a real estate kind of approach, I mean, that's kind of where Bitcoin scales as a monetary use case, because a regular pleb won't deploy a lot of their Bitcoin on Lightning. Like that's reality. Like number go up, right? But a company can actually do that because they have investors and a yield incentive. So that's kind of the match, made in heaven, because you have plebs in third world countries that want to use Lightning, and you have treasury companies that want to have a yield. So that's the match, basically.
By the way, Grant Cardone is going to do great. Grant, real quick, you've got Bitcoin treasury, you've got real physical assets that people need, that they're willing to pay for shelter. And all you need to do is just manage the amount of Bitcoin you have versus what kind of real estate you have, and then maybe sell your real estate for Bitcoin at some point when you think it's smart, or continue to rent and collect Bitcoin, or whatever. You have a physical asset. You're not just some financialized douchebag who's pushing paper around. You are in real stuff. And one day you're going to flick a switch and everything's going to be denominated in Satoshis, and it won't affect you at all. You'll still be doing great.
Well, it might affect you because you might end up dumping all your real estate when you start doing that at one point.
Well, then you're done.
I
The
might, I
cost of
might, I
carry is
might be.
quite a bit
Wait,
lower.
what was that? What could happen?
Well, if you start denominating your assets in terms of Bitcoin, like your real estate, you might realize one day that it's trending down and you're not recouping, a certain amount of value that you could have if you had sold it previously.
Guys, in what world, if the dollar continues to get destroyed, it would continue to take on debt. How does
Well, for example,
No,
Grant,
price of
what
Grant,
Bitcoin.
what
Price of
happens to the
Bitcoin.
Grant,
real estate?
well, Grant, for example, when I first started denominating everything in terms of Bitcoin, this was 6 years ago or so, right? My house was worth like 40 Bitcoin. It's only worth what, like 15 today or something, right? And so, like over time, after you've started denominating in terms of Bitcoin for a certain period of time, your assets tend to trend down, and it might be a good asset, might be a good piece of real estate. I mean, I own a
So
good piece of real
you
estate.
only want one asset class.
Well, I want to maximize my Bitcoin denominated net worth. I don't really care about maximizing dollars. I care about maximizing Bitcoin. And I need a house to
I
live
don't.
in, so I didn't sell it
All
at
right.
the time. But at the
It's a
same
utility.
time, I kind of regret not selling it, right? Because I could have
Hey, Wiccan.
gotten
Yeah.
almost
Well,
4 times as much Bitcoin back then.
Also, Wiccan, your house costs you a lot of money to maintain, upkeep, and all the problems. Bitcoin does not
Yeah,
carry
I
that
mean, I
responsibility.
live
You
in
just
it,
don't got
right?
to
So
live in it.
Guys, you don't want
I'm not earning any cash flow from it.
Bitcoin to be money.
But
You don't want Bitcoin to be money, which is what it's become, or at least a store of value, which is characteristic of money. The reason everybody's buying houses and the price of houses is going up is because they're using it as a store of value, because the money sucks. Everybody knows, whether they know it consciously or unconsciously, that you can't keep your money in cash. So they go to assets. And the reason that I own 6 properties and some kid who's 21 can't afford one now is because I'm storing my money or
Archer, but wouldn't you rather have?
in real estate.
But wouldn't
And
you
when that
rather?
unwinds,
I don't know when you bought your real estate, but I mean, if you could go back in time, would you rather
it
buy
doesn't
Bitcoin
matter.
or real
It doesn't
estate?
matter. It doesn't matter. You're missing the point. It's not a matter of how a fiat. Look, most of the increase in value in houses, the houses are the same house. Over time, a house depreciates. It doesn't get more valuable. It depreciates. It's 4 walls and a
The
fucking roof.
dollar's worse. But the argument is that
I know,
Bitcoin is the
but
better store of value than real estate.
no, it's not. The argument is that you don't want real estate to be money. That's the argument. And it's not about what went up and what didn't go up. Real estate is
But real
acting
estate
as
isn't
money
money.
instead of.
well, it's acting as a
But it's
store of
acting
value.
as money.
Yeah,
It's acting as
Mine
money.
isn't.
And the
Mine's
problem.
gone down.
All right, well, look, the point is that it's creating real
because you live in
distortions in the
Portland.
market. Yeah, right, exactly. Because it's creating distortions in every asset class because people are forced to use stocks as money, to use real estate as money, to try to get bonds as money instead of money
I want
because
to
our
jump in on
currency isn't
the
money.
real estate thing first. So I do think as the boomers die, maybe 15 years from now, residential real estate is going to revert to its utility value because no kid is going to put all his money in houses at that point because there's an oversupply. Second thing that I'm concerned about with Lightning, Dave, to your point, the current yield on managing opening and closing and balancing Lightning channels is around an optimistic 2%, right? Not considering any capital appreciation. And then, the record for doing it extremely well is like 10%, right? But that's almost impossible to do. My
That's
concern is
because
that, okay,
they're
if
an
we get,
exchange and they're running an LSP basically, right?
yeah. And then my concern is like, okay, well, if we get stable coins on Bitcoin and they're starting to offer us like a consistent 4% yield, okay, well, now we're not out competing them with that either. So that's a concern for me. My last question though is, how do you mint Tether on Bitcoin? Where are you embedding those transactions, technically speaking? How do you do that?
Yeah, I can answer both of those questions. So the initial, like how to make Bitcoin in Bitcoin, like how do you earn more Bitcoin in Bitcoin, right? And like if you just horizontally route payments, yeah, the yield could be quite low, right? And Block, who is Jack Dorsey's company, right? They have 200 Bitcoin on Lightning. It's like the 10th largest Lightning node, and they're doing 10% APY latest. And that's because they have captive flow, as I call it. Like they have the on ramp to Lightning from their user base, and they also have like millions of users on Cash App, and they have the merchants, and they have everything, right? So the actual best, if you're a treasury company, if you can acquire like apps that have millions of users and you can have that on and off ramp to the Lightning network, that's a really good kind of ability to get earn a higher yield in Lightning. But yeah, in terms of managing channels, like I don't want this to sound like an ad, but our company, like we manage other people's Lightning nodes for them without custody, because that's actually possible, right? So we have scope permissions and we can do that work for our clients. But in terms of Taproot, in terms of Tether, you use what's called Taproot channels, right, which is being rolled out. But you need a lot of liquidity on Lightning for that to be relevant for Tether, right? So that's kind of the bottleneck, and that's why I make money regardless. Like if I put liquidity on Lightning from a treasury company that has 10,000 Bitcoin, they want to put 20 Bitcoin on Lightning, like I make money, right? I don't care if that's going to be used for Taproot channels or whatever. That makes no difference for me.
But wait, Tether can only be minted on Lightning layer 2. It doesn't go layer 1.
No, everything's minted on layer 1, and then it's just represented in channels on Lightning in the same way that you mint a Lightning channel on layer 1 to multi-sig, and it's represented on Lightning as such.
And it's going through a Taproot leaf.
Like the idea with Taproot channels, as I see it, is the ability to kind of have one stable coin come in from one place, and then you have another one on the other side of the payment, right? So that kind of flexibility. But then you need to have capital on Lightning channels, right? Which are
It's the same topology. Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the same topology as Lightning, where it's
yes,
multi-party channels, and then you have you basically have gateways between the two assets who do the swaps, and those gateways need to have channels in both, basically feet in both assets to do the swap between the
and
two.
since Lightning is doing like, what is it, $500 in average, it's not really relevant yet for these stable coins. But investing, like putting your Bitcoin in Lightning is like buying Bitcoin in 2010. Like that's the situation right now. But the problem is that it's a hot wallet, right? So you're actually putting the Bitcoin at risk forever if you're gonna keep that server up. But that is the kind of, like, if you put Bitcoin on Lightning today, you're building your node. That becomes more attractive for people to connect to, right? So you have the preferential attachment theory, like with networks. So if you put capital on that network today and you keep doing that for the next 5-10 years, you have a much cheaper way of earning that future yield. Like if you're Saylor and you hold off for 5-10 years, like even if you have 800,000 Bitcoin, you might be late to the party. Like it might become more expensive for you to become the next big airport or the next big AT&T because you waited for so long. So there's the timing aspect here, and that's kind of like buying Bitcoin in 2010, but on a network effect kind of level.
Coinbase should get into that. I don't know if Coinbase doesn't get into the Lightning game.
They're too busy with shitcoins.
They can make so much more money probably right now through Lightning without even realizing.
So, where does the yield come from? Am I correct that to generate any yield on Lightning, somebody must pass a transaction, they must route through you? And so to get, so it's like a toll booth. So if Saylor puts an 800,000,
Portland, not just routing fees, but if you're acting as an LSP, you can also get liquidity, right?
Yeah, 100%. I'm just saying, but to get that yield, there has to be enough activity to essentially for somebody to pay that yield. And so if there's not enough market demand for 800,000 Bitcoins at 2%, You're not
They're
going
going
to
to
be earning
collapse it.
2% on your
Yeah.
Bitcoin. You're going to be underutilized. Am I
But
thinking
think
about that
about
wrong?
it.
Too much
Think
Bitcoin.
about it as real estate out in Western Phoenix when I was going out to Luke Air Force Base. I would drive by, it was all cornfields forever. This was back in the early 2000s. And it was $5,000 an acre. And I was like, I should buy that. It was right off the 101 route. If you know Phoenix, it's the loop around Phoenix. And I didn't, and I didn't. And now the stadium's built on that, a huge shopping mall, like I could have got that for nothing. But at the time, there was nothing out there. It's the same
Yep.
thing with putting Bitcoin to work on the Lightning node. Right now, there's not a
Oh,
whole lot
okay.
out there, but it's worth it because you know what it's going to be.
So I guess my follow-up question, just free markets. Why do I need to do it today? Why can't I wait until there's more demand and then just underbid
Because
my other my competitors, right? Just say,
I can explain.
hey, I'll
yeah,
take
today
less of
they
a fee.
today they want to connect to your node, and the more nodes you have, the more interconnectivity you have, the more money you're going to be able to charge. So the earlier that you're
Sure.
there, and you're a critical node that gets a lot of the activity, that like goes on forever. No one like
Isn't there
disconnects from
also a
you.
reputation tied to your node and your channels? So like a stable channel
Yep.
gets a
Yes,
better
yes.
reputation.
Uptime, age, and connections.
Okay, but am I correct though? Like I could come in and maybe the yield is 2% to route through. And what if I come in with 1%? The market could choose to go, hey, I will take the trust hit to get this lower fee. Am I
It
correct
will.
on that?
That's a free
I'll
market.
tell
Okay.
Yeah,
you. I'll
that's a
tell
free
you what
market.
happens. I can
Okay,
show you
there
the
we go.
dynamic
The free
here.
market.
I'll give
Okay,
you the
so
game theory right here. This is the game theory. This is like what Grant and Gary knows in real estate. This is the lightning real estate game theory right here. So what you want to have, there's two things you can have. It's either that you have a high velocity of money, so that you have X amount of Bitcoin on Lightning, right? But then you have inventory turnover ratio, right? So you have the ability to kind of utilize the same Bitcoin in a lot of payments. And since you have these channels, like they can deplete in one direction or the other because transactions are only going one way at some point, right? And then you have to rebalance and you have to open new
yep.
channels and all that. So if you can put yourself in a position where you have traffic in both ways, then it can be automatically rebalanced for you like naturally, right? That's the perfect situation. But that rarely works forever, because at some point, some guy somewhere you don't know is going to change his fee rate down by 2%, and then he captures the traffic that you just had, right?
Yep.
And since you only have the data that your node is seeing like to your direct peers, you never have like a full view of the transaction volume. So like Portland, if you have a channel with Wicked, for example, and I have a channel with Grant, and then Wicked has a channel with Grant, there's a lot of payments that could go through. Like we want payments to go through our channels, right? Our own channels. But the problem is that we don't have that bird's eye view again. So this I have a white paper coming out on this. That's why I'm so nerdy in this topic. So since our model is kind of managing other people's nodes, like if I were managing all of you guys' node, like I can optimize for the group, right? Because then I could make sure that Grant opens channels in North America, you open channels in Brazil, and that guy opens channels in to certain businesses in that part of the world, right? And then we make sure that the cluster is optimized so that we don't open channels to the same businesses. Because if we all open channels to Kraken tomorrow, right, or we all open channels to Binance, then Binance has like 5-6 roads that aren't being used. And that's the problem with Lightning today. Like if you just open the graph, you'll see that it's like a spider web, and there's so many channels that are not being utilized. And the wallet, when it tries to make a payment, it tries to find the cheapest payment at any time, and then it tries that the cheapest path. But then if there's not liquidity, the payment fails, and it
Hey,
tries to make.
Dave, when you say the
Can we reroute
pledge,
now?
do you mean that there are merchants that take it and there are sellers that don't? Well, all the sellers are going to take it if they're offering it. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so if I'm a company today, or let's say a payment processor that has
Yeah,
company clients down the
yeah, that's
line, or I'm
right.
a service
Yeah.
provider, if I want to receive Lightning payments
Hmm.
and be able to send or receive from my position, like I need to be connected on the network,
Yeah,
right?
you would have to go set up with PaySafe, and they would have to give you their API, and you would have to do the whole plumbing, right? Correct?
You need
You
to
got to
build
get
like
the
that's the
contracts
issue with
together.
Lightning. You need to build your own fucking AT&T to do this today. That's the
Okay,
problem with
but
Lightning.
before you pitch me to going to Mars, which won't happen in my lifetime, just walk me through Lightning. So when I launch Bitcoin, and then I want to do this yield bearing Bitcoin thing with Lightning. As soon as I move to Lightning, um, Like, have I signed a contract with Lightning? Who have I signed up with? Who's managing it? It sounds to me like I'm moving into the fiat system
No,
immediately.
you're definitely not, but you might be
No, do I
depending on
sign
what
a
you're looking
contract?
at. Yeah, so it is
All
a
right.
smart contract, and that might sound like a bad word because it sounds like crypto BS.
No, I
But
just
when
want to
you
know. It's a
yeah,
contract. I mean, is it any smarter than any other contract that I would sign with
It's a two of two
PaySafe?
multi-sig, basically on chain
Okay.
yeah,
is ultimately
so
what it
when
is.
you put your money on Lightning, you need to put it on a server, right? So you need to have a very, very secure setup for the server, and it's never going to be as secure as cold storage, right? So that's the first kind of thing you have to concede, right?
Yeah.
Secondly, when you have your node and you open a channel, what you're doing is you're opening a 2of2 multi-sig where
Uh-huh.
you are collaborating with another participant on the Lightning
Yeah.
network to lock
Yeah. So
capital
I'm
in.
building I'm can be both the seller and the consumer, right? That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to bypass. Lightning's basically trying to hub up all the Bitcoin users, hodlers, so they can have a place to trade. Is that really it? And then you
To
bring all the
transact
merchants
Make
on
a
in.
Swift
network
system
for
on
Austrian.
built on
Yeah.
Bitcoin.
Yeah.
It's a lot
And
cheaper than
well,
decentralized
how's it
cards.
different? How's it different actually? Other than it's
It's
cheaper.
different because like when you make a card payment today, it's not instantly getting cleared, right? So it takes a
Bro, it
few
ain't
days.
getting cleared for 180 days.
Exactly. I mean, depends on where you are in the world and which provider, right? But it's Lightning uses the similar kind of approach where you settle periodically. So you and I have a channel. There's millions of transactions happening, but we don't have to settle like the final. What was the final state? We can settle that much later. And if I have a channel with you and you have a bunch of other channels, we can utilize that as a network, and then we can
What
do.
do you mean I can settle it later? How can I
No,
sell it later?
so
I
you and
sell
I.
you an automobile for 10 Bitcoin, um, and then you don't like the car. I mean, well, what do you mean settle?
So
If
what
you
I'm
drive
saying
away
is
with
that
the
you
car,
and
aren't
I
we done?
are going into an agreement to set up a road, and in that road, you and I could use it, right? We could have two roads, like a road between our houses, right? We can go back and forth, like it's a private road, only you and I can use it. But that makes no
I
sense.
got it. I got it.
I,
I got it.
I think
We
Gary,
got a
maybe
little.
maybe for your mental model, at least for the time being, Lightning is kind of optimized currently for relatively small payments. So you're probably not
Yeah,
going to
that's
be
what I understand.
probably not going to be buying like a car or a house
Yeah.
over Lightning.
Okay. So it's retail, real retail.
Hmm.
It's not really even peer to peer.
Uh,
No, it is
Oh, it
peer
is.
to
Yeah.
peer.
it's peer to peer in
Why
the
would you
sense
want
that
small transactions
It's
peer to peer?
actually, Gary, it's actually more peer to peer than the Bitcoin network. The Bitcoin layer one is a broadcasting system. Lightning,
Yeah,
you're
it's like radio.
literally connecting peer to peer. It's literally peer to peer.
Yeah, but whose network is it? Because is it owned by
no,
Satoshi
it's
or the
it's just
Bitcoin
it's
Corporation
It's
or
decentralized.
owned by
Fred?
nobody. So it's
Yeah.
owned by whoever the two channels were created by.
And then are they the same? They're
Like
not
if
using
you
the
created a
idiots.
channel with someone else, you two are like in control of that
Yeah,
channel.
got it,
I
got
think
it.
Gary,
the
like
analogy is
Lightning.
oh,
But why would I want to go through the trouble unless me and my brother are gambling every day, which would be awesome to do, by the way, Grant.
Yeah, you guys should open a Lightning
And
fund.
we're having to smash money back and forth to each other. What's the value of me opening a channel with Punch?
You
Gary,
I
can't
don't
be
know
shut
about
down.
Lightning is
You
the
can't be
I
only
shut
don't know about
down.
way.
You
opening a
can't be
channel
Lightning,
with
stopped.
Punch, but
Lightning
the
is the only
ideally,
Well, I
way
mean,
for you.
bro,
there's a
okay, so should I go
Gary.
get a account with 8 billion people
the
just in case
reason
the whole world
I
shuts down?
the reason I use Lightning is when I interact with exchanges, I don't want an exchange to know my entire wallet balance. So like
Right.
The
There's
reason I
it's
do
a
it is I don't
privacy
want to wait 10
feature.
minutes.
so
Yeah,
there's
and I don't
actually
have to wait. It's
Can I
instant.
tell Gary
yes,
something
instant
important?
instant
Like,
settlement.
yeah, Lightning
And
is
you
the only way for you to earn a native Bitcoin return on your capital with no counterparty risk.
and you have complete anonymity on Fediments.
For the sender,
Period.
not the receiver. The sender has
No,
a
no.
lot more privacy than on
Hey,
Bitcoin.
Impediments.
Punch. Do you think the Node 40 business is going to be a massive windfall from this? This is already starting to like become
I don't know.
hugely
Are they
problematic.
purchasing nodes? Is
No,
that
no, you asked the question. You said, "Hey, who's going to account for all this?"
nobody?
Node 40 is that company I own that does this type of audit trail, and it's like on
Throughout the whole network.
well between stable coins and Bitcoin. What's your
Yeah.
basis? What's the cost, dude?
I
It's
don't
a
think
massive issue.
stablecoins. I don't think stablecoins can coexist on Bitcoin, on Lightning, on anything else, because
I know you think the world's polarized, dude.
no, I think
It's
I know that stablecoins can be shut down. If Paolo gets the tap on the shoulder from
everything can
whoever's
be
telling
shut
him,
down, my friend.
not Bitcoin
Yeah,
network
but
can't.
shut it down.
The
But shut it
Bitcoin
down
network
You,
can.
you can't
stablecoins.
really shut down Lightning though.
Yeah,
The
like
whole
what is
point,
it like? They'll shut
The
down
Bitcoin
Tether, but how
network
do you
can't.
shut down Lightning?
Well, now let's just assume half of the
Why,
transactions.
why, why do we
Half of the
want that to be our
transactions.
sales pitch?
No. I'm just listen. I'm not pitching anything. That's the
Yeah,
point.
you are, dude.
No, I'm not.
Your
I'm
whole
telling.
angle, yes, you are. Your entire viewpoint and perspective is the whole world collapses,
No, it's
and we
not.
have to be peer to peer so we can trade ammo and water and food.
Well, Garrett, that is what
Yeah, it
Bitcoin's
is,
all
dude.
Yeah,
about.
but even if it
You're,
That's what
collapses,
you're,
Bitcoin's all about. That is
but even if it
the whole
collapses,
value
Bitcoin is
system.
it's not
perfectly
about
fine.
that for everybody, bro. It might be that about for
I
you, but
know for
it's
you
your
it's
only
number go
angle.
up. It's for you it's number go up. I get it. It's okay.
I can tell you what's going to happen, Gary. So you have Square, you have Block. They have 8,000 bitcoins. Like these guys are well prepared for the future, right? They have a Lightning node currently. They have a million merchants accepting Bitcoin. Most payment processors will not have 8,000 Bitcoin on their balance sheet, right? So they're going to have
Agreed.
to rely on you guys and your Bitcoins to be able to pivot to Bitcoin payments. So that's kind of
Capitalize it.
how you should not think about it that you're like a
Well,
treasury
maybe
company.
the Bitcoin. Hey, the Bitcoiners might ought to go to Money 2020 show and light up some businesses because you could intermediate so much business for the legacy payment guys. I spent 15 years in that industry, dude. There's so much money to be made. That's why, this is not going to just be easy peasy, chicken greasy. Market share has not been captured by anyone yet, really. Even Stripe, is it Jack? Like I thought Jack was going to do the retail thing, but
Yeah,
nobody's done that well.
that's why I'm here.
Dave, were you the guy that was making the post about the Hawalader system, kind of like the Islamic remote trade system that kind of did
Nah,
commerce similar to?
wasn't me, man.
No, Dave.
Probably not, but I am Muslim, but that was probably not me.
Okay, sorry, I assumed that.
Hey, Gary, the reason I was talking about stablecoins, not wanting them on Bitcoin at all, is because they can be turned off. And if they're turned off, that's one half of a transaction, assuming that half the transactions are on stablecoins. And once that happens, which I know you and I both know it can, because it has, and it will again,
And it will, it may, yeah,
nobody
probably
will
will.
take stablecoins unless you're retarded, because then you've just increased your counterparty risk. So why would we want it on the network to begin with? We're trying to get out of the fiat
Okay,
system.
Puncher, alternate take here. How are you going to stop stablecoins from existing on Bitcoin? Because even if you get
Nah,
Taproot
nah.
outputs, oh, even if you
They're
get
going
Taproot
to
outputs,
die and people are going to get rugged. That's what's going to happen. And
okay,
don't say you weren't
so
warned.
okay, yeah, I warn everybody. You're going to get rugged on any meta protocol on Bitcoin. If you're not using the native Bitcoin asset, you're probably going to get rugged.
You're not going to get rugged on a Bitcoin transaction.
100%.
You're going to get
No, that's
rugged.
what I said. The native asset.
No.
You don't got to worry about it. It's
Yeah,
only
that's
meta
right.
protocols on top of Bitcoin.
That's the whole
So
point. That's
Bitcoin.
right. That's right.
So closing it out, it sounds like the free market does the work for you. That like these things come about, and you technically can't
Yep.
stop anybody from doing it.
These are
People get
tales
rugged.
of warning. These are tales of warning.
Yes. Okay.
Do
Great.
not buy
We agree.
MSTR. MicroStrategy, the common stockholder is the patsy at the table 2 years ago. I told everybody as soon as I
So
heard
Punch,
Saylor, I'm
if
like, oh
Taylor
shit.
pivots, like if he actually pivots and puts Bitcoin on Lightning and Arc, like they might become the most profitable company of all time.
Okay, but
It's
Michael Saylor doesn't talk about Bitcoin as money. Never. So
Do you think maybe there's an incentive for him not to talk about Bitcoin as money because
yes,
that's
because
the
he's building a
type of
fiat
issuance?
derivative empire on top of Bitcoin that's based in fiat.
Yeah, they essentially want to help stablecoins use STRC and similar products as a way of backing them, right? So that's the whole play. But the reason being is because the yield market on Lightning is so small today. And so it's actually kind of a weird problem where he's too much, like the treasury is too big, right? Like, so if you're a treasury company with like sub 1,000 Bitcoin, you're in a very good position because then you can look at Lightning and say, hey, this makes sense for us. If you're above 20K, I mean, that's then you're looking at digital credit and these things, which I don't recommend for sure.
It's coming. I put something in the post. You guys should read it. My guy named Michael Iliano, who I didn't know who he was, met him a bunch of times at a Scottsdale meetup. You got to read what he wrote. It's fantastic.
I do think so. I think digital credit is retarded, right? It's by design, literally meant like it's literally by design meant to underperform Bitcoin long term. That's by design what it what it is meant to do. And even during bear markets, it sometimes would underperform fiat, just holding fiat, right? Maybe the premium collapses and wipes out all of your yield gains and you've underperformed fiat. So I think it kind of has this weird position where it underperforms Bitcoin long term, it underperforms fiat short term sometimes. But at the same time, I think it could also be a bit of a gateway drug for people who, want the cash flow and they want, some of the maybe a little bit of the volatility of the Bitcoin. And if they make it through a cycle or two with stretch and they've gotten their whatever 10% yield and they experience a little drawdown during the bear and probably a little run up during the bull, like I wouldn't be surprised if Saylor lets
Wait,
stretch go over 100
so
during the next
Where's the
bull
it's
yield
market.
coming
retarded. It's
from?
retarded because it underperforms Bitcoin. It's actually like
Well, it's retarded because anybody who's using Bitcoin as a unit of account, I mean, you're literally putting your money in an asset that is designed to go down in Bitcoin value long term.
yes, there's a purpose to
So
it.
as soon as you get orange pilled, right? I mean, I think the idea
You know
is we
that
want to
there's a
orange pill
purpose for that.
everybody.
There's a reason why someone would do that. Do you not understand that?
Well, they're trading the long term profitability of holding Bitcoin for short term cash flow. I get it. But the problem is that even this product experiences a little bit of the volatility of Bitcoin. And so, in the short term, you might actually underperform just holding fiat if you're doing it during a bear market. And then in the long term, it's obviously, like very obviously, better just to hold Bitcoin, right? Or even during a bull market, it's better to hold Bitcoin. So it has a very like limited, I think, scope of demand. And I think this demand is largely people who just don't understand Bitcoin and
I
who
don't.
want yield on their
I don't think
fiat.
that's fair at all.
But
I think it's a
but
function of how wealthy you are. Because
Well,
the
when it's
wealthier
time
you
to
are, you
cash
can't
in,
just be
Jimmy,
all in on one asset.
well,
when you want your
I
Bitcoin,
don't
you're gonna have
necessarily
to.
think that's
It
true
it's
because
it
if
is.
if you're extremely wealthy, then you can just hold like whatever
There's a lot.
10,000 Bitcoin,
Well,
and you're drawing down so little on your Bitcoin that over time, you're
that's
probably
not
going to outperform
that's not the
even if you're
okay.
just holding Bitcoin and drawing
Do you
down on
know
it
people with
versus
like a
holding
family
some cash
office or
flow
like the nature
assets.
of a family office, like how they're supposed to operate? Because it's not. They don't want to. It's about preserving as much of your wealth as possible, and going by buying 10,000 Bitcoin is retarded if you're managing your own wealth.
Not if you
Well, it depends
understand
on when you
Bitcoin and
buy
had a
it.
long time and had
Well,
Yeah,
short.
10,000 Bitcoin.
It,
If your
it, it,
world
dep-
made
it depends on when
$50
you buy
billion
it,
dollars, then
right?
it's a smaller
But
percentage of
Jimmy,
your.
you know what else is retarded? Buying stretch at $100 a share and then losing 25% of your premium during a bear
Yeah,
market when you could have just held fiat.
only if you actually rely. So only if you're actually relying on stretch by itself to generate income and wealth. But like,
Sure.
if it's being used properly, it's like what, like a point, maybe like
Yeah,
one
yeah,
and a
yeah.
half percent
But
of your
but
fucking,
but but my
you
my
know.
my point is that, like for anybody who's paying attention to this, during a bear market, it's better to hold fiat than stretch, and during a bull market, it's better to hold Bitcoin than stretch. And so it's there's not very much of a selling point aside from just people who are, like ooh la la about the yield. They see a 10% yield and they say, "Oh, yeah, that looks great." And they consider the premium to be fairly stable, which obviously was wrong, right? And that blows up in their face. And then, hopefully they learn their lesson. They realize, oh, I probably should have just not done stretch during a bear market. And then when the bull market comes around, they're going to say, "Oh, it's so awesome! It went back up to 100 peg. Oh shit! It went to 110. Oh my god, it's 120." And they get all euphoric, but then they realize, "Oh shit! If I just held Bitcoin, I would have gotten 300% gain."
Yeah,
You know?
80% of the holders of STRC are retail at this point. I think it's not. No family
Yep.
offices are buying it at this point.
Well, it's
I
it's
think
retail on
probably
leverage because they didn't realize that it could depeg so badly, right? So they levered up. They thought, oh, at most it's going to go down $95, maybe 90. So they levered up to the point where they thought they weren't going to ever get margin called, with like a margin call price down there. And then when it did, you had a cascade of liquidity crunches, right? So I mean, I don't know, man. It's like people are just learning the lesson the hard way, as always, that leverage kills you. There is no free lunch. You know, anything that says it has yield, right? You are the yield, especially in terms of Bitcoin. And
Unless it's like
I think over time, as more people learn this, they just become orange pilled, and they realize, oh, I should just be saving in Bitcoin because that's the best long term asset to hold your value in. So in other words, I mean, I'll get back to the original point. I think it's a gateway drug. I mean, all shitcoins are gateway drugs, to be honest, right? They're all gateway drugs. You just realize over time, oh fuck, shouldn't have been holding these shitcoins. I should have been trading them. I shouldn't have been holding these derivatives. I now have less Bitcoin denominated net worth. If I had just been holding the Bitcoin for the last 10 years instead of fucking trading it, if I'd just been holding the Bitcoin instead of like, gambling on altcoins, I would have had more Bitcoin. I would have been able to retire 5 years ago instead of having to fucking stack my ass off for the past 5 years, right? I think everyone realizes this eventually. And when you're in a product like Stretch, maybe it's even more apparent because of the direct tether to Bitcoin, right? It's literally a digital credit asset backed by Bitcoin, what the fuck that means. And so it's a little bit more apparent. You're like, oh, experience
it's
a
not
little bit
actual
of
credit because they
volatility.
can stop paying dividends at any point, right? So there's no obligation for them to
Yeah,
even pay.
right. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a
But yeah,
it's a bit
they're
of a
all gonna. So
misnomer, but yeah.
yeah,
Anyways,
what's gonna
Dividend is
happen is
based on
they're
share
all
price.
gonna have to deploy on Lightning at some
no,
point
dividend
in
is
order.
based on the $100 price tag originally.
Oh, really?
So
Okay, so
when it depicts downwards, it actually has a higher, you know,
yeah,
yield.
percent
hmm
yield. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
I think currently like the relative, I don't know, do they call it the relative yield? I forget what
It's called
made
the
up
current
term they made
yield.
for that, but
The current yield. Look at
what is it called?
the current yield.
Is that what they call it? Okay, the current yield, what is it now? Like 15%? Because it's,
14.5%.
The
yeah.
thing, what happens also with how they reported their MNAV also changed. I think they changed the definition of like going with enterprise value or something instead of like the regular MNAV kind of definition. And this is kind of what happens, right? Things get diluted, like language gets diluted, like what your offerings gets diluted, like how you speak about your metrics gets diluted. And
Well,
like as I mentioned,
if
I
any of you
send all
remember,
these.
Saylor is the expert in, diluting wording of his financial products. And didn't he get in trouble with the SEC for doing this type of accounting shenanigan stuff back in 2000? like this is kind of what he does, right? He's known for it. Sorry, what were you saying, Dave? I interrupted you.
No, I was gonna say like that, as I said to Gary before, like the only way to have a native return is to deploy on Lightning currently, and then it's gonna be Arc as well later because Arc needs a lot of capital as well. So that's a very attractive. I expect the yields to be a lot higher for Arc actually. But then what this enables is it enables a treasury company to pay native Bitcoin dividends, right? So you can pay sats to your shareholders directly as dividends. Because now you're actually earning in Bitcoin rather than paying fiat denominated yield, right? So you're paying Bitcoin denominated yield. That's when I think treasuries are going to make sense because we're not going to have plebs running Lightning nodes that are delivering infrastructure for major payment processors that wants to deploy on Lightning. We're going to have companies on the other side, and that's some of them are going to be treasuries, and that's kind of the play that we're expecting to happen. It's the natural evolution, right? You put an early bet on buying Bitcoin as a company, and you should be able to reward yourself in some way, and that's by deploying it on as a payment infrastructure, right? If Bitcoin is money, like that's the natural kind of play to enable that medium of exchange to happen, right?
We got a few hands up right now. Let's go to Casey.
Yep. Before I start, just want to say thank you for hosting this space, Fred, Portland, and Wicked. It's been listening for the last hour. It's a pretty thoughtful, incredible space. I am coming. So I am coming from a bit of an opposite opinion, although like I do love Bitcoin. It basically pioneered peer-to-peer payments. I've heard some arguments against Bitcoin being programmable. I think there was Punch who was here earlier who said it would destroy the chain. I'm obviously kind of aware of what's going on with BIP 110. I guess I'm just trying to understand from your perspective or from the panel's perspective, do you guys not, or at least sympathize with users or people who would want to use on-chain payments? Do you not see how it would be difficult without like stable coins or like things that could come from programmable money versus like using, at least Bitcoin right now, it's like currently quite volatile, like using like Bitcoin purely? Does that make sense? Does my question make sense?
I think I think I know what you're getting at, but like we have Taproot channel support on Lightning, so any form of use case that you would want to connect like stable coins to Bitcoin with, that's on a major level possible today. But as we discussed previously, like Lightning is probably the best method of payment ever that humanity has ever designed, because of the private aspects of it and the fact that it's fairly instant and permissionless and all that. So, but yeah, I'm gonna leave that to somebody else to answer. But I would kind of, the whole BIP 110 thing is about, keeping things simple, not introducing risk, and then a bunch of other historic stuff we're not gonna get into here probably. But and obviously the whole spam issue, but that's a separate topic entirely.
The original ethos, obviously, from the Satoshi white paper was a peer-to-peer digital currency that was trustless, got rid of the middleman, et cetera, et cetera. But it's really a long-term thesis here. I mean, we're in a mode now where the volatility is real, the ups and downs are real, and people are not looking to spend their Bitcoin on a cup of coffee. I mean, it's great to do it as a test case to make sure that it flex the network and stuff like that. But we're in a point in the market right now where Bitcoin is in its ascendancy, and it's very important that we maintain and promote the monetary credibility of Bitcoin long term. And I think if you start to add too much functionality and get away from sort of the monetary ethos, you undermine the long term prospects. Now, I hope there will come a time where Bitcoin becomes a competitive form of payment for people to do transactions. It's not today. I'm not familiar with any place that takes Bitcoin for anything other than a marketing trick, right? Everything, if I go use Bitcoin somewhere, it's a dollar denominated asset and they'll allow me to settle in Bitcoin. That's not a Bitcoin transaction. That is not where we're headed. But you can't denominate things in a volatile asset because it's, who knows, is it, this price or that price? And so there will come a time, and pick a number, 5 or 10, 20 years, you pick the time frame, that's not important, where Bitcoin becomes stable and can become that standard form of transactional currency. And by then, we're going to have to come up with solutions that allow for the scale of a Visa, MasterCard, or a SWIFT network that Bitcoin currently does not have today. But to me, I'm very concerned about the BIP 110 debate and the coming debate that will come around from quantum, because I think all of these things affect the relative monetary credibility of Bitcoin as that future target global for money.
Wait, you don't think Bitcoin should be quantum resistant?
No, I do, but how are you gonna fix it with a community that is divided?
I think that actually will solve itself incredibly quick. And we've seen this in Bitcoin time and time again. Inflation bugs, all sorts of like duplicate transaction bugs, anything that's like an emergency, a must have in Bitcoin, consensus is found incredibly quick. If somebody's stealing Satoshi's coins tomorrow, I can guarantee you by next Tuesday, or even probably the end of the night, we're going to have a solution to work with the miners to basically like stabilize the chain, or like ensure that these things aren't being quantum stolen via quantum computers.
I hope you're right.
Well, 100. No, I guarantee you.
That's like Parkinson's law, right? Which is the people spend the most of their time on the subjects of the least importance, and
what?
In his book, he talks about, if you're talking about where to put the nuclear reactor, well, that's we'll spend 5 minutes on that decision. But what brand of coffee machine to buy? We're going to
bike. It's called bike shedding. Like the nuclear reactor is breaking down. Let's go talk about what color it is to paint the bike shed outside, right? It's an easier topic to talk about. But my point basically is, though, like if you look at things like BIP 110, the reason why it's struggling to like get consensus is it's not an emergency by any means, and like it's not a good sell in general. Like it's not a must-have. It doesn't have this urgency to it. Even Taproot, it took a really long time to get that 90% consensus because it really wasn't a need on the network. But guess what? When the chain split happens, because you have a database version change in version 0.7 to 0.8, and suddenly miners are mining on two chains for 30 blocks is all as it took to figure out which way to go on the fork. I think quantum is going to be in basically the same exact state. It's literally not going to do anything because nobody's going to, it's not a must have. Somebody's going to, the canary's going to die in the coal mine, and then we will figure out in hours which way we're going to go.
And to be fair, Portland, I mean, there's lots of people doing work in the background in the meantime.
Exactly.
You know, there's not really much consensus being built around those solutions, but they're still being built. And so we're gonna have the options ready, and when the threat emerges, we'll just pull the trigger.
Yeah, that's literally what's going to happen. Like if it happened tonight, we have solutions available today to resolve this. We could have this solved by tonight. What we're going to do. The thing about like consensus is really all consensus is when people want to change it. Are others willing? You're imposing your will. So basically, like if I say my consensus law is Bitcoin is 42 million coins, I'm going to double the coin cap. I want to impose my will on everybody else, but guess what? Nobody else is going to take it because that's ridiculous. We don't want to do that. But if everybody else agrees with the thing that you want, which in this case, like a quantum computer is attacking Satoshi's coins, okay, we need a quantum secure algorithm now. And everybody agrees, okay, my will is to solve this problem this way. If everybody else agrees, congratulations, we're in consensus now. We've officially solved a problem on the network. Like that's what consensus is. Do you have enough weight to impose your will on other people? It's a lot easier when everybody else agrees, and nobody agrees easier than in an emergency that affects the coin's value and utility. It's beautiful. That's rough consensus.
But there is consensus for BIP 110. It's like you two guys are like the only guys against it. So.
Oh, I mean, like.
I don't know if you're being serious, Dave, but that was a funny joke.
I mean, like, okay, so, Dave, do you support BIP 110?
Of course.
Okay, so you support BIP 110. What's your problem with getting it activated today? You can't impose your will on others. Nobody else, you don't have enough people agreeing with you to do that. That's really that's the problem. If you had more people that agreed with you, or everybody agreed, you would have this activated today. It doesn't have consensus. Because it's not active,
right? So we're following schedule, and it's all going according to schedule, in my opinion.
Okay, well, Dave, according to schedule, I mean, you would have preferred to have it activated earlier, right? I mean, the reason why you had a whole activation period of a whole year is because you were hoping it would be miner activated, and they would, you know, conform to this soft fork. Otherwise, you wouldn't have even given them the option, right? But that was added after the fact. It wasn't in the original proposal. But it was added after the fact because you wanted to give them a chance, and because it's not a bad idea to have it activated earlier if you reach that rough consensus earlier. Am I not wrong?
55%.
What I can tell you as kind of what's my pitch, right? Everybody has their own kind of pitch, right? I'm a guy who actually tries to make Bitcoin a medium of exchange by obviously getting investors like Bitcoin treasury companies, family offices, etc., to deploy natively and not invest their time and energy in these digital credit products and these shitcoin stuff, right? And I find myself in a conundrum where I see people have a lot of problems with, like, this is a maintenance kind of soft fork, right? Or it's not a soft fork in that sense, in the traditional sense. It's quite different from other changes, right?
It is a soft fork by definition.
But what it has kind of shown is that people have a big problem with conservative changes, because this kind of moves focus away from a lot of crazy ideas that people have. And like I could probably count on my fingers, like on my 5 fingers on my right hand, how many actual important problems we have that we have to solve in Bitcoin right now, except for the quantum stuff. That's like long-term things. Like we have ARC coming up. ARC is going to be crucial for Lightning to scale.
Are you in favor of CTV or any covenants to make ARC better?
Yeah. So that's, I had a debate with I had a I'll fight there with the CEO of one of the ARC companies. And we have our own ARC implementation, by the way, that we're working on called OpenARC. It's open source and it's supposed to be a standardized ARC implementation.
Is it going to use coin joins for the VTXOs?
So it's going. What the difference with the ARC implementation we're working on is it should allow a wallet provider to source capital from other capital providers, right? So it's a sharded ARC or a decentralized ARC or however you want to call it. So the problem today is that if you're running wallet provider, if you're a wallet and you want to have ARC, you have to rely on the ASP, right, for capital, and you're basically using their full service, and that's fine because it's early, right? But long term, that's not going to scale because the ARC server will have to raise capital, dilute, and it's going to be a mess, right? So I'm working on all these things, and I think BIP 110 makes a lot of sense, and that's why it's like, okay, there's probably arguments against it, but I also go to all these conferences, and I think 99% of people are not doing anything important, So the question again with consensus is like, initially people think it's a stupid idea, but then as you go and you what I did is I kind of looked at like who's actually into this and who's against it, right? And a lot of people I disagree with are against it, right? That I saw initially very early. So and obviously you shouldn't base your decision on just that, but it is an important aspect for sure.
Okay, Dave. Can I?
Sorry. Sorry, no, you go ahead first, Portland.
I would like Dave. What, in your opinion, what is Bitcoin's most important security mechanism?
I would say that people are running like sovereign nodes. I mean, that sounds like I'm saying that just because of the situation we're in right now, but I would say that because it's quite expensive. Like if you think about like a third world person investing in that and then paying like $1,000 or to run a full node or $800 or whatever, it is quite an investment, and people can barely like make their bed, right? So it's I think that's the biggest risk for Bitcoin, that we don't have actual decentralization, right?
I mean, so the answer to that, I think, in my opinion, should just be consensus is Bitcoin's greatest security mechanism.
Effectively, yes, but also like I want people that have like we're all humans at the end of the day, right? And then we wake up and we do actions based on what we think. And I think that if people are not making decisions as independent people, like that they're actually sovereign, I think that's a big problem. Like if your decisions are based on that you care about what somebody else thinks that's above you, like your boss or whoever's funding you or whatever, I think that's a huge problem for Bitcoin. And I think that's kind of been exposed in this like the whole BIP 110 debate, where you have I know a lot of people personally that can't speak out because they feel that it's too controversial to speak out, right? And then you're like, oh well, people are not signaling and all that. Well, a lot of people like open source devs that are grant funded, they're not going to speak their mind because they might not get funding, right? So these are problems that we really need to think about, because is that really decentralization?
But Dave, why hasn't a Coinbase, why isn't a Foundry, why hasn't a Antpool, why isn't a Via BTC, why isn't a Kraken,
why hasn't an LSP?
River? Yeah, why haven't these entities come out in support to make these changes? But I don't want to get too far off the topic. The reason why I asked you what the most important security mechanism is in Bitcoin is because I want to question about like what your opinion is on a minority of individuals and entities being able to change the rules of Bitcoin, because that's what this is. You're telling my node that mines blocks what has to happen to be able to be compatible with your node. You're trying to impose your will on me. And I don't think that having a minority activation by node runners, hash rate, and economic actors of a consensus change should be viable in Bitcoin under any circumstances. That makes me question the security and stability of my money long term. What are your thoughts on that? Like, yeah, that's my question. Like, what are your thoughts on basically like minority activated soft forks?
My take on the whole debate is that when I have this debate with like my technical friends, obviously a lot of them want CTV and covenants and all that because they're working on ARC.
I would like them,
which is relevant stuff, right? Like we actually want to improve the technology, but then we have to also take steps. Right now, Bark is live, and we have like the initial ARC company. That's we have ARC Labs and all that stuff. So that's great, but at the end of the day, I'm a very conservative guy. Like I'm a religious guy. That might sound like irrelevant to Bitcoin, but okay, I'll just break down the concrete.
It is.
if there is an ability to improve Bitcoin's monetary use case or monetary kind of element of it by 0.2%, I would support that mission, right? And then if the counter to that argument is, well, that's another fork, and the more forks we have and like discussions about the consensus rules and all that, that's bad because that's high time preference. That's the argument from the people that are anti this. So, and my argument is like, if you think Bitcoin is going to succeed, you're going to have a point in history where people have become much more traditional, much more low time preference and all that, where they would actually argue for forks or updates that are more focused on very, very small improvements that might look ridiculous to you, but for a person like me, it's super relevant, right? Because I think I said this in another talk yesterday, like, I'm the guy in the 12th century Europe saying, hey, we should probably not have interest with loans, right? Because that's illegal to our religion, right? And if you look back, like, people didn't care. They did that anyway. And we got fiat, right? So I'm that crazy guy from the 13th century saying, hey, we should probably avoid any form of arbitrary data if we can. Like, if you tell me it's impossible to do any form of improvement, fine. But if there is even a sliver of improvement we can make, I want to support that. That's my take.
So you mean like it's just arbitrary data in your case, like, but you get to pick and choose which arbitrary data you like and don't like. What about a case where, for example, I do these monetary transactions because I'm a bank and I tag each one with a specific special address as an output that it does burn a few sats, but I use it on the accounting model and it also represents something internally. I'm using this to move money around. It's a monetary transaction, but it has some arbitrary data I need for my systems to operate correctly. Does now my monetary use case of Bitcoin come under your scrutiny and your rules that you've decided that you don't like these types of transactions, they must go? Because that's what my biggest issue with this is. This is picking winners and losers. What's up?
Why don't you use Lightning? Like, you're not going to use the main chain. You're going to have banks and large treasury companies.
I know. I want the settlement properties of the main chain. I don't want risk, a counterparty risk of like, hey, a force close.
You're going to have that, but you cannot expect in the next 5 or 10 years that you're going to use the main chain as you're using it today. Like, that's not going to happen. Like, in the next 10 years, you're not going to use the main chain. Like,
I got enough Bitcoin. We'll be fine. Like, I'm just saying,
like, the BIP doesn't discriminate by
to make a main chain transaction at one point. So,
but like, the BIP doesn't discriminate by type of content. It discriminates by the amount, correct? I don't want to get into like, yes, but you can put it here and there, but it just doesn't do it by whether it's an image or not.
That's what BIP 110 does, right? Like, it just says like, okay, like, you can't put data here or there in any form or capacity.
Well, not in any, just less.
I mean, no, like, I'm just saying though, like, I can't use the if else statement for my Taproot transactions any longer. Like, literally, the Anchor Watch default policies for their insurance, if you compile them from SegWit to Taproot, break this rule. Like, the compiler doesn't use a bunch of tap leaves; it uses an if else. Like, that use case, which I consider pretty monetary, goes away.
We're doing great stuff, right? And I think you might be more affected than the usual person, the usual company, right? Because
but that's my point. It's like they
but then
picking
you're
winners and
very,
losers.
very special entity, right? So you have to keep that in mind, right?
But like, okay,
there's no conspiracy to kind of cause problems for you guys, right?
No, I know there's no conspiracy. I'm just saying, like, my bigger
what he's
issue
saying
with
is
the
that
whole
it's
thing.
Sloppy. Like, it's sloppy.
It's very
the
sloppy.
fact
And,
that
like,
you're even doing that is sloppy because you really shouldn't be affecting anybody with any soft fork if it can be avoided.
Even deeper as a problem to me, the reason why specifically, like, I think anybody can truly dislike arbitrary data is because of the fact that it creates volatile fees potentially, especially like the ordinals and inscriptions in 2023 when Udi goes up on stage and he says, I broke Bitcoin. I think that touched a lot of people's hearts and that was very painful. They couldn't transact on chain because of these spammers. That's the real reason. I think people are upset. Arbitrary data, yes, can increase the chain size, but the growth rate of technology is far higher. And there's always that cap. You can't bypass that. It's limited. The fees are not limited. That's the only component you can't, like, put a range on in terms of its outputs. And so closing this, is like, if today spam is a problem, what happens when a JP Morgan, a Chase, my business starts buying a lot of block space and the plebs have trouble transacting because I'm producing more
or an
economic
arc,
value?
or an arc for that matter.
Or an arc. I don't even care what it is. I'm just saying though, like if you start picking and choosing for the free market who gets to use this block space, that is such a slippery slope for long term. And if you demonstrate the playbook once that, hey, this is how you can get rid of competition for that block space, is by creating, like, for example, an outrage campaign from a mining pool, right? Okay, we got rid of that. We got rid of these spammers competing for our block space. What happens? The next guys that want to get rid of you from transacting as well because they want the block space for themselves. You could potentially, like, that's, I just don't like anybody trying to impose rules on even types of transactions or limiting the scripting system in any way further to reduce competition for that block space.
What is that?
Okay, that's my closing statement. I think it's just a very dangerous precedent to set. And yeah, if BIP 110 does activate, you set the playbook for censorship going forward. Pure and simple.
Can I ask, I think we lost Hoddle, and I wanted to ask him this specifically, but maybe Wicked, you could stand in for him because you might know what he would say. And disclaimer here, like, I'm not going to have a rebuttal to this. Like, I listen to what you guys are saying. I go back and I think about it and I come back. So the issue with the low activation threshold, the 55% or the 0% as Mechanic says, you guys don't like it. But the framing that was posed is that anything that's not consensus is therefore policy. How is the activation threshold not a policy choice that anyone can decide to do anything with? And you don't have to like it, but doesn't it fall within the realm of policy and you can't stop it?
So,
well, it's
go ahead, Portland.
I was going to say it's not policy to your own node that enforces that threshold, right? Because as soon as your node sees that, hey, that the blocks coming in have signaled that I must enforce these rules, that's now consensus. So in effect, you're really creating consensus by setting these rules into effect. You're telling your node, this is what happens. The path forward, it's deterministic.
Yeah, it's part of the consensus.
That's a second order effect. And that's sort of the same argument that was made for like things like the GitHub and like that's all consensus. They can do what they want. Well, or the defaults, well, that's creating consensus out of policy because all the mining pools set their defaults.
So I think,
isn't it the same argument?
I think the real argument against a lower activation threshold for a miner activated soft fork is you're basically opening up an attack vector for a smaller number of large pools to try to take advantage of the slower moving smaller pools. And so by having such a low 55% miner activated soft fork threshold, you know, in those early signaling periods, what could have happened, right, if the larger pools, you know, figured out that they could have done this thing to gain an advantage, is they could have signaled early and be fully prepared to enforce, and then catch all the smaller pools off guard, and then gain an advantage in that way. The reason why a larger threshold is important is because you don't generally want to cause a bunch of disruption to the network when you are activating a brand new set of rules, right? You want there to be a large amount of support, both from the users and from the miners, and, you know, hopefully from the developers as well, right? You want all parties to have buy-in, but especially the miners. I mean, you don't want there to be forks and splits and reorgs, right? That's messy. You want there to be kind of a higher threshold of support and readiness to build blocks according to these new rules. So by lowering the threshold, you're literally just opening up an attack vector for no reason, because, you know, in the end, if it's not reached, then it's not reached, and you reach your, you know, mandatory signaling, and, you know, so be it, right? But with the lower threshold, you know, you're just saying, hey, hey, Foundry and Amp Pool, if you guys want to, you know, coordinate, you can fuck over the other miners. And I think that that's like a pretty bad precedent to set. And honestly, there's no reason to do that, in my opinion.
I don't think it will
happen. I'll come back with my response once I think about it more. I'm just trying to create a parity in your mental model between someone like Peter Todd creating Libra Relay, and then, you know, we get spamming like 1 megabyte blocks full of spam, and they see an existential threat on the policy side, and you guys see an existential threat on the policy side with the activation, right? So there is existential threats that can exist in policy.
Isn't policy, though. The activation is part of consensus.
Consensus. The difference between consensus and policy is simple. Policy is a my node, my choice kind of thing. Consensus is you do as I say. Like that's where it all comes down to. If a activation height for when something is enforced on your node That is a do as I say. That's a consensus. That's not a
Well,
policy.
But there's no consensus rule that says you must introduce forks at a certain threshold, is there?
No, I mean there's BIPs, right, that we have generally abided by. But
Yeah, so
Portland,
it's an abstraction out of consensus.
well, it's codified in code when you actually propose it. But Portland, to be fair, you know, when you say it's a rule, or let's say it's a law that you're imposing on your node, that's really only if you're a mining node in the context of a soft fork, right? Because user nodes don't necessarily have to update if they don't want with a successful soft fork. I mean, that's kind of the point, backwards
It
compatible.
depends, like,
But miners do.
if it all depends on how contentious the fork is. If it's split and it's split for a long time,
That's
then
true. I
you're
mean,
going to have to
if
pick your
there's
side.
reorgs and it's
But
causing chaos,
yeah,
then you know you're probably also
but
having a forcing function there as a user.
but Bitcoin is convergent in nature, which means that, just as my thesis is, this whole 110 thing will converge on a single side. I don't think there may be outliers, but in general, the consensus will form very likely on the primary chain that we use
Well,
today.
if there is any sort of sustained split, right, and by sustained I mean like longer than a day, I think it's very likely that the BIP 110 side, in order to stay alive, would just have to hard fork, and then you're not really dealing with anything we're talking about here.
It depends on the hash rate. If
Well,
you get a
no, if you hard
45-55
fork, you do
split,
a difficulty adjustment or proof of work change, and then the hash rate doesn't really
yep.
matter.
Oh no, I'm just saying, like, it depends on, like, also, like, if they get, for example, 45% of the hash rate,
Right.
and that hash rate sticks, and they're like, oh, dude, we believe in this to the death, that this is Bitcoin, right? Then they don't probably need to do an adjustment or anything. They're just going to take a 4-week difficulty adjustment period. That's my opinion, though.
Yeah, I mean it'd be like 4.5 weeks or 5 weeks. Well, I don't know. I
Yeah.
haven't done the math, and then the other side would get theirs in like 3.5 weeks. By the way, if that happens,
That's a
who's
bad situation.
who's gonna foot that bill on the BIP 110 side? Is my question.
Oh man, but like the main thing is, though, anytime the chain, it must resolve to one side or the other, because anytime the chain split like that, that represents a risk of a double spend, unless you literally create essentially two factions where one side goes, ride or die, this is my side of the chain, right? Our exchange will only support this. This is what we use. I don't think there's any environment today where that would happen.
Well, and also most exchanges have already explicitly said that they're only going to support the heaviest chain, and they would not support a soft fork in the event of a chain split that doesn't have replay protection. And
They would not support?
They would not. Yeah, correct.
That was a joke. Sorry, not.
No.
Okay.
I mean, you know, it's a risk to support any soft fork in the event of a chain split, because you have, you know, as Portland was kind of alluding to, double spend problems. You know,
Yep.
even like deposit and withdrawal problems. I mean, there's just all sorts of problems that can happen because of replay, and also because of the potential of a reorg, right? And so you're just going to not support it if it ends up being a minority fork. And that, you know, is problematic, I think, for any soft fork that's contentious, because now you're dealing with trying to keep a chain alive that doesn't have good on ramps, right? So, how are you going to actually earn or buy new tokens on that side and pay the miners to keep mining it? I mean, these are questions I've been asking, and I've been trying to figure out the answers to, right? I've asked every single exchange point blank if they will support BIP 110 in the event of a chain split, and only 2 have said no, and all the other ones ignored me, right? And it's nothing, and it's something I haven't really been hearing other proponents of BIP 110 ask exchanges up until maybe very recently, right? Because now they're actually starting to think about it and worry about it. But like River's not going to support it. They've outright said they wouldn't. Relay is not going to support it. They've outright said they wouldn't. You know, I've had private conversations with Jack Mullers. He's not going to support it in Strike because, you know, he's not wasting his time even thinking about it. So it's just like, where are you guys going to buy this BIP 110 token in the event of a chain split? And honestly, I think we all believe that if there is a chain split, it's probably just going to die very quickly, right? Is that the answer?
I recall Binance, one of their VPs came out in support early on. and then deleted his post because I don't know if this is verified, but apparently got death threats. But I don't know if we can confirm that Binance is actually going to follow through on that.
Wait, what did Binance say?
One of their VPs, I recall, made a post in support of 110 early on.
Yeah, I mean, of all exchanges to support it, maybe Binance has the risk appetite to support, a shitcoin minority proof
I
of
mean,
work
if
change.
they cared about it, they would announce that they're going to support it. Like
Right.
if they truly want to turn the tide, like even my tune would change quite a bit if an exchange like Binance came out.
Well, not even if
companies to go out first in line, like this is a grassroots thing, right? So it's not gonna come from like the top down. I think you're really overestimating.
you need to have communication and building out of the infrastructure to actually make these things happen. They don't just happen overnight and at the flip of a switch, right? I mean, this is part of the this is part of the blindsided.
Increase of activity in the last few days with Saylor coming out and all that. So it's like he has 5 million followers. So like I think you're underestimating the fact that it has to go from the ground up, and you guys are kind of discounting, saying, "Hey, nobody went out in front from the exchanges."
I think you're underestimating from the ground up all the work that's done by people to reach out to pools and to exchanges to actually support these things.
No, I know the CEOs of pools. Don't worry.
Okay, I mean,
it's not like you're the only guy who knows people in the business.
So do Portland. I mean, Portland's literally directly worked with them, right?
I mean, yeah. Let me throw this out there. If you truly want to get your change made, it's actually not the CEO that you want to know. The CEO actually probably get upset with you if you talk about Bitcoin right now, because the CEO of these publicly traded miners are thinking about one thing: how do I get more AI compute? Even at Mara, if you bring a Bitcoin issue up to Fred right now, you better be a very valuable employee, because you to him are wasting his time during that moment. You actually want to know the name of the ops guy that manages the mining equipment, or the little Bitcoin guy. Every pool's got a Bitcoin guy hanging around. That's the guy you want to talk to, because then that message goes up through right to the right guy, because the CEO doesn't matter in that case. The CEO is not going to care about BIP 110. I'm sorry. Maybe if you're Roughnecks mining, yeah, you can care because you're a small entity. But the real hash right now, no. You ask the Bitcoin arm what's going on.
Sorry, is this what is the percentage in the Bitcoin community of pro BIP 110? Is this a niche? I know it's not a niche discussion.
Depends on who you talk to.
More than probably a wide majority of the pleb node runners support BIP 110, and it's just major cope from people that.
Wait a second, Dave. What node stats are you looking at that make you think that?
Right? So wait.
Dave, what node stats are you looking at that make you think that?
You've spoken now.
Go ahead.
For 20 minutes. So
no, go ahead. I want to hear.
Yeah. So
explain yourself.
I'm a business person, and I like to run companies, and so I understand Portland's kind of perspective of that this might affect parts of his business, and that's fine. And I feel sorry for that. I would be pissed as well if I was working in that kind of business, right? And I had this issue. But if you have clear signal from node runners that this is an issue that they support, you should take that seriously, and then you should look at that. But you shouldn't say, we're gonna fork off, fuck the plebs. I think that's a bad kind of that's not a Bitcoin I want to be part of, at least.
No, I'm not saying that. Sorry.
You're not saying that particularly, but people are saying that. And another thing is that for me personally, when I go to a Bitcoin conference or whatever, 90% of people on stage are not really producing value for Bitcoin, to be honest. There's a lot of side projects that are really somewhat valuable, but not really crucial to Bitcoin's actual survival. So when it comes to the masses supporting any question in Bitcoin, I look at who has integrity, who has a good track record, who has not been a shitcoiner, and these are the things I look at, and then I make my decision on who should I even start listening to in the first place, and then I can read into the details, right? And in this question in particular, it's been a very clear answer for me that the people that I respect in Bitcoin, that I look up to in Bitcoin, are on the BIP 110 side, whereas the opposite is true for a lot of people on the other side. Not everybody.
What do you think of Francis from Bull Bitcoin? What's your opinion of him?
No, I don't know him in particular, but I'm not gonna go and name any names like that. But
I mean, I think Francis is one of the most based Bitcoiners out there, and also doing a lot of work to make Bitcoin better money.
Please do not use the mini script AI function. Like, sorry, like that's crazy. Continue. Can I say something about like the plebs? This is my opinion. Okay, you know what? I'm just gonna say it. The issue I take with that is like there is value in being like established in a Bitcoin ecosystem as an economic participant or miner, right? Or even an influencer technically, is that you don't want like a currency where a bunch of new people who have very little invested into Bitcoin, time, resources, hash rate, to be able to change the rules for the existing players. I couldn't put my value in a system like that because I would always be worried that, hey, the new cohort that just came in of the last cycle are now telling me that I got to use my money in this specific way. I consider myself a maximalist. I mean, like I stack Bitcoin, my wealth goes into it. I work in Bitcoin, like trying to better the ecosystem. But I still don't support BIP 110, primarily on the basis I don't want the rules to change for this specific reason, and there's not enough consensus around it anyways. But my point is,
I would actually say it's like if you work in Bitcoin, I would say the risk, and I work in the industry right now. I would say it's a higher risk of not being able to be purely authentic to the protocol decisions, right? That's my take. Because if you're working in Bitcoin, you are incentivized to make money in a market that's not developed yet. Like we don't have hyper Bitcoinization, so we're always looking. I'm not saying that your company in particular. Like I think I'm a fan of your company at least. Like that's kind of my take. I think it's Anchor Watch. It's a great company, right? But we have to think about this like phase of getting to hyper Bitcoinization. You're going to have a lot of grifters and scammers and spammers and whatever. And
alternate perspective here. Oh, sorry, you can go.
My point is just that I really look at who's saying what and for what reason. And there's a lot of people that are economic actors in Bitcoin that are also making a lot of fiat denominated money on other things that are not actually helping Bitcoin reach hyper Bitcoinization, right? And I'm much more focused on the people that are actually trying to make Bitcoin reach hyper Bitcoinization. That's kind of where if I look at an economic activity person, I'm looking at those people and not that people that has I run the biggest exchange, I have a big mining pool. Like that's not actually relevant for consensus level stuff for me, at least as a Bitcoiner.
Dave, sorry, just okay. Asides, because I want to hear your opinion. Like asides from like Bitcoiners that you respect or people in the community that you respect, do you really think it's like in your own words, like are JPEGs like or like other data like a big enough threat to Bitcoin right now to? I mean, you're talking about consensus going like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like it's disproportional.
I get what you mean, and I get that. I get where you're coming from with that because it sounds ridiculous, right? Because Bitcoin is supposed to be this invincible thing, but it is you probably heard it before, but it's the death of 1,000 cuts kind of theory, right? And I kind of treat spam or JPEGs or whatever similar to interest, right? Which was forbidden by most of the world religions at some point, right? Or at one point. And then usury became this thing where you could say, oh, it's illegal, but then it was, you could do some level of usury and interest. Don't do too much interest because then that's the definition, right? So like definitions change. We just talked about Saylor changing the definition of MNAV the other a few 30 minutes ago. And that's kind of the fear I have. If we don't close these holes early, like even if it's a tiny hole, it might compound because then people like myself might give up on the whole idea. I know that sounds insane. Like, why would you leave?
I think it actually compounds if you fight it. I mean, I actually take the opposite stance
I
there.
think it might compound on the more conservative route. That's what I think. But I don't think that it's going to be like, okay, now we close these holes and now we're going to start censoring transactions.
Well, Dave, I'm saying I'm saying the issue of spam. You breathing life into it by acknowledging it and actually treating it as if it's a real threat when in my opinion it's not. You're keeping it on life support. You're literally like fighting them, and you're creating this game for them. You're gamifying their product, right? You're saying, hey, I'm going to try to stop it, and they're saying, oh, great, thanks for the attention and the free marketing, I'm just going to route around you. And then they do, and then you prepare another year to try to shore up the holes that they've just taken advantage of that you never shored up in the first place, and then they route around it again, and you get another round of free marketing for their next round of shit coins, and the game just
Well, there's
continues
more
on
to the story,
until
right? It's the
You know
whole
what?
core history and everything. But I'm not the guy to go like more of an expert on Lightning, so I don't know every single detail, right? But I know enough to kind of make a decision, right? And that should be kind of what we should.
You're well aware that BIP 110 literally stops no spam, right?
Correct.
That's not true.
No, I know it
It
literally is. Every single meta protocol that spammers currently use have already released bypass, like a patch that bypasses the BIP 110 rules in the event of an activation. So it quite literally does not stop any of the spammers currently.
Runes didn't
So
even have to
Casey,
patch. Like
Well,
they
Runes was accepted because it's under the op return limit, so it
correct.
didn't even get stopped. Stamps didn't get stopped. Inscriptions has a patch to route around. There's now like contiguous data patches that allow you to route around, right? I mean, like basically everything that you're trying to stop has already released a PR that can be merged at the click of a button that would bypass it.
Here's
So
the
Casey,
real
I
issue,
wanted
though.
to. Oh, sorry, Paul. Do you mind if I go?
Yeah, sure. I got a thought.
Sure. So Casey, the reason that I support it is I want to see that Bitcoin is capable of making conservative changes, that we can sacrifice innovation for tradition and be, thoughtful and prudent about development. And this has always been for me more of a social thing than a technical thing. Like I'm not a technical developer type. I do build a lot of tech stuff, but it's not in the realm of like, C++. But I want to see that there is like a reinstatement of the belief that Bitcoin is money first before other things, and we're willing to sacrifice those other things when push comes to shove. And I'm willing to stomach any inconvenience about a year of not having that newfangled shiny thing that someone wants to play with or someone might be building, because I think it's important enough to reify that at the social layer, we still believe these things. Because just like the Constitution is irrelevant if no one actually enforces it, so is Bitcoin irrelevant if no one's developing it in that direction. So it's a directional and aspirational thing for me.
So I guess just one last question before I hop down, just for you, Anand, actually for everyone, for Wicked, Fred, Portland, Dave, Anand. If we're like sort of in this debate now of like, in my view, something that's like very small, Dave described it as like a small hole. When it comes to like other, I guess because I've been in the space for a while, I've working in like different like altcoins, or I've done work at the Ethereum Foundation at Monad currently. There's a big race for like private payments, RWAs. Is that just like so far out of the conversation in the Bitcoin community? It's not even worth talking about, because that's what it feels like. With like,
I think there's quite a few people working on those things.
Okay, I'm like not on main. Like I don't really know much about Lightning, but who's working
you
on
should
it?
definitely study Lightning, because the space you're in is like I could just go outside and throw a rock and it would create more value than that space entirely, right? And I'm not saying that to be mean, but more so being like kind to you and like helping you out, and kind of like abandon that and look into Lightning and Arc especially. Like, I think you would like Arc because it's more technical and it's more
So sorry, who's
innovation.
working on those things that I mentioned? Yeah, go ahead.
Casey, I think my answer to that would be simple, that a lot of people are working on like Bitcoin privacy as an additional layer or coordination for like on-chain transactions. So like you get a couple people together, or you use like a Lightning channel or Fedimint, etc., like different technologies like that. But to have the idea that Bitcoin is going to be talking about like Monero-like privacy, using like ring signatures, for example, or something at the layer one, that's completely off the table right now. That's hit nobody's radar.
Yeah,
it's never gonna happen.
That makes then where, like, just for my own knowledge, where are these solutions being worked on, if they are being worked on outside of the layer one?
Like Dan Gold is working on PayJoin right now, and then anybody working in Lightning focuses on privacy quite a bit. I don't know the exact names of these individuals or entities.
Okay, well, perfect. Great discussion, guys. I'm gonna switch to listeners, but Fred, Portland, Wicked, this has been like, I looked at all the spaces today. They're all like shit, and I looked at this one, and it was good.
You got the best.
Yeah, have a good day.
I got to tell you, I really have been enjoying listening to Portland and Wicked in particular, and Dave. I think the discussion here has been really high quality, and I think we should have more discussions like this. You know, I can't follow all the technical stuff, but I think this is great. We need more of this stuff.
So, Dave, this was my thought from earlier on, like, in general, like, spam is a second order effect of having a poor fee market for monetary transactions, aka not enough people are using Bitcoin on chain to outbid the spammers for the block space. That is a completely a social problem. In my opinion, there is no technical solution, including BIP 110, that is able to overcome that problem of demand for the low price block space for spam. And the only solution for that is literally outbidding the spammers. Because if you create, for example, BIP 110, you close the op-if, op-else envelope that Casey used for his inscriptions. Oh, congratulations. You got one guy that created an alternative client to essentially like have to modify his consensus. And his consensus is a lot less secure than Bitcoin's consensus. So he'll always be able to move faster than you, right? So he'll go tell his users,
He's already moved faster. Yeah.
Yeah, correct. My point is like, okay, so we do op-if, op-drop. Okay, so you ban op-if, you ban op-drop. Okay, congratulations. Now you do push to alt stack. Like there's, and then you can even go, okay, well they ban that.
You're just going to handicap scripting in general.
Incorrect. And the point I want to make as well is that at the end of the day, if the demand exists to buy that block space for whatever that is, remember, it's a permissionless network. Like people can just use it, right? Okay, you've made their overhead higher in terms of how much they have to pay extra on top, but you didn't actually technically reduce the amount of data they're going to use because those same spammers can, in any method they want, still buy the entire block itself if they so desire.
You've actually increased it in most cases.
Yeah, if it's the same amount of data, now you have to put in extra overhead. So previously, what took one block may now take 1.1 block in an extra like 2%. Or if you go really extreme and you go to pub keys, you're going to make it 20% more expensive for them. But the end result is if there's demand for spam that is higher than there is for monetary transactions, that's why this behavior happens. A technical solution will not solve this social problem. It's impossible.
By the way, I was gonna say the one thing we didn't mention with the privacy stuff is, I mean, there is work being done with like shielded CSV, and I think David Seroy talks about that quite a bit. If you follow him, FYI, I don't know. Thought I'd throw that out there. Anyways, continue.
Hey, Fred, these spaces have been happening for a long time. A long time. All right. This isn't new. Wicked and Portland have been doing this
for like 5 or 6 years
How long?
now.
When did y'all meet each other?
5 or 6 years ago, we started doing spaces like this.
Yeah, and it's really fun. Everybody can start drinking, and then you get, random people coming in and shitting it up like me. But yeah, it's a good space. Good job.
I will say, so when I first started doing these spaces and would jump on with Portland, I think it was during the early heydays of Lightning, and we would just like educate people and learn ourselves how to fucking
it was all about Lightning. Run a node, just run a node.
Just fucking be like, sending sats to each other. Just got a channel open or something. It was all about Lightning back then. Remember that?
Oh yeah, 100%. Like the Lightning was, in my opinion, in a far better state. Actually, like 3-4 years ago, I was using it far more. And Wallet of Satoshi, really? I know it's a custodian.
You're using it far more?
Yeah, 100%. I was using,
I use it way more now.
100%. Okay.
And it actually works now. You don't have all the failed payments anymore.
Am I wrong? I haven't had any services I need through Lightning recently, and I used to make like little small bets with individuals. It was very easy to settle.
Well, I mean, you got to start doing that again. You got to start going on.
Sure,
go on Predicts.
This is a user problem. I'll agree. It's a user problem.
Portland,
not a protocol problem.
Go on Predicts, right? And start making bets on there with Lightning. Go on a Bitcoin company, the gift card app, and start buying gift cards.
You can make your own market and fund your own liquidity pool.
Yeah, I like the Bitcoin company Portland because you can. So with the Bitcoin company, first of all, they have better sats back rewards, and then second of all, they do they give your sats back immediately, and you can do auto withdrawals to an LN URL, so you get like immediate sats back to your presumably self-custodial Lightning. But even if you're using a custodial Lightning or a Spark wallet, right? paste in your LN URL there, and it gives you your sats back immediately. I mean, honestly, it's like that's the way that fucking money should be, and spending should be, right? You're spending on a
Sorry,
credit
I'm going to bring
card, you should get that money back immediately to be able to spend again. It's kind of magical when it all works out in Bitcoin in that way.
we're coming full circle here, but Dave, on Lightning, is there anything preventing someone from making a fiat denominated stablecoin that is distributed on Lightning where there's no issuer, where everyone's just running it as a something they're just doing, other than regulation? And my thing is like, okay, if they want stablecoins, it's coming from the government. I fucking hate the government. Fuck them. Is that something someone could build?
It's already been built. There are, quote unquote decentralized stablecoins that basically just use derivatives to balance the value of them. Right. Those are already built and I think launched on like Liquid, if I remember correctly. I forget the name of them. Here, 1 second, let me go find it.
Yeah, you need to have more liquidity on Lightning for it to make sense. And the question will be, if you do get more liquidity on Lightning, will people just use Lightning instead? That's the kind of conundrum there. Because people use stable coins today because Lightning does not have enough liquidity, right? So that's the kind of like mismatch.
Chicken and an egg.
But now that the average transaction size is like $500, then as was mentioned here, like an average user trying it out has a successful payment more often than not, and that basically makes the whole recommender effect much more efficient. Because back in the day when it was like $20 in average, a lot of payments failed, and people were like, "Oh, this shit sucks," right? So that's kind of the difference, and that's why I expect Lightning to keep growing by 100x at least every 4 or 5 years, and that's where you get the Visa level transaction volume in 8 years approximately.
But do you see a world where people that are still on the fiat standard use Lightning stablecoin over a Tether?
Yes, and I expect CBDCs to use Lightning. So I expect governments to prefer Lightning actually because of the privacy benefits. So Taproot channels will probably be relevant for that, being able to bridge from fiat to Bitcoin.
Well, I hope that happens.
Yeah, and I think people should look into Arc. Arc is literally the front lines of Bitcoin tech, and it's like one company. Like you have second, I think, is the native Arc implementation, right? They're just doing payments, nothing else. And they recently launched, so you should try. I know the guys who make one of the wallets for them, and then they're legit. So you should really look into to Bark. It's second.tech. That's the website, second.tech. And there's a wallet called Noah Wallet, open source. Try it out. I mean, it's pretty cool technology. Like it basically allows you to ride share a UTXO, right? That's the whole idea. And then the Arc server who's helping you to do that can also run a Lightning gateway to allow you to pay from your virtual UTXO directly through out to another Arc server through the Lightning Network, or just another user on the Lightning Network. But then the Arc server obviously has that gateway to Lightning, and then they have a monopolistic opportunity there to charge a higher fee, right? So our own Arc implementation has, as I mentioned previously, like a sharded Arc. So you have capital coming in from third parties, and if those third parties also run routing nodes, then they can also act as a gateway. So then you could have like 3 gateways from one Arc server to the network, right? And then you would have a lower fee and all that. But then it's more complex. So if you have a wallet and you have this sharded Arc, which is basically like 3 service provider providing this service, then yeah, if one goes down, then the Arc server is down, right? But then you have this for other federated systems today, like Liquid, and you have it for Spark. So I don't think it's going to be a major issue.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not really familiar with Arc that much. Does it currently operate on mainnet? Like, do you have things that you can? Okay.
Yeah, fully operational.
Cool. And then does it also have the same sort of abilities as Liquid with like non-custodial covenants like Taproot stuff?
So it does not have all the fancy features yet, right? So that's kind of the short answer. And
depending on the implementation, though, right? Because isn't the what is it?
Yeah, so the Arc Labs team has me blocked on X. I don't know why. I think I'm too conservative for them or something.
What's the implementation that is facilitating a lot of shitcoins? What's that one? Is it the second whatever?
No, so second is a pure play.
Okay, right. What's
native
the one that's the shitcoin one?
So Arc Labs is doing other things on top of that. So and they
Okay,
have Tether as an
so
investor.
are they the ones who? I mean, I guess would you say their implementation is like more programmable in the sense that they're facilitating like swaps between shitcoins and stuff?
I haven't really looked like that's. It sounds weird. I should have looked into it more. But since they have gone down that path, I've been more interested in Second's implementation. And our CTO
Yeah,
is kind
me
of the
too.
Arc guy, right? So he's a real expert on Arc. So I'm not really the guy to kind of answer all detailed questions. But what I can say is that it's definitely worth looking into, and there is no standard way of doing it yet. I mean, Arc Labs and Second differ quite a lot, and our implementation differs quite a lot from Second's. So yeah.
My question is, am I correct that ARC is a cosigner service essentially for these virtual UTXOs with your ability to unroll unilaterally? Am I right that like somebody's acting as a signer for these transactions?
Yeah, you're building
Correct.
these trees, and since the users can't trust each other for like they trust the server, right? But then they're not. It's quite hard to get double spent. You can get double spent by the Arc server and whoever's sending to you in certain situations.
But
upon expiry, right? Is that what you're saying?
But my bigger question is like, I just want to make sure I'm correct in my understanding. But like, okay, so that trusted server gives you like in the same way Liquid gives you a bunch of whatever it offers, like scripting or I don't care. But the thing I want to ask about is how does that unilateral exit? How well does that perform under heavy use? Like, is it low cost, or is this like, hey, I gotta like reveal this tap script or something that is ginormous as a multi-sig, and it costs?
Portland, I can answer this question. So I mean, I think with Arc and with protocols like Spark, I mean these protocols really scale very well in the best of circumstances, right? And you you want the collaboration and the basically like the exits where you're working with your counterparties as opposed to the unilateral exits, because those ones are expensive.
Okay, Wicked. The FBI just took my
Right.
my Arc service provider.
Yes.
You guys are all fucked. What do you do now? Like, how does this work?
So in this case, assuming that the ASP has a ton of users, you would probably have months of congestion as everyone's unrolling and unilaterally exiting, right? But,
okay, there's the catch.
But listen,
okay.
Listen. The point is, for the off chance of a couple of months of mayhem and congestion, maybe as a trade-off, you got millions of off-chain transactions scaled onto this layer. So netted out, all in all, you still scaled Bitcoin using it, right? In the same way that even with like Spark, which is a nightmare to unilaterally exit and also requires trust, right? I mean, Spark, you're trusting that the Spark provider is deleting their key shares or whatever, and so there's an element of trust plus unrolling that Spark transaction to unilaterally exit is super expensive and requires many transactions in order to do it. But you're doing that because now you can use Lightning in a way where you're not managing liquidity. You have, like a slightly more trust minimized, assurance. And you're assuming that, well, the Spark provider is not going to ever go down. I'm only using it for coffee payments anyways. So like if they do, whatever, it's better than just a purely custodial provider. It's kind of a regulatory arbitrage because the only reason they're really doing it is because they can label it as non-custodial, even though it's kind of still custodial, so they don't have to KYC you anymore. So anyways, I mean, it's like all of these things have huge trade-offs. And I think ultimately when it comes to these second layers, what you're really trading off is you're trading off short-term convenience, right? You don't have to manage your Lightning channel liquidity. You don't have to manage, like the complexity of of kind of that upfront cost with some of the simpler approaches. But as a result, in the worst case scenario where you do have to, unilaterally exit because things go to shit, that's where the complexity now arises. And so you're trading off the short term um, ease of use for maybe, in the off chance, a longer term pain in the end when everything blows up. But you're just kind of hoping it doesn't.
I
Right.
mean, that's the game theory there is that the market kind of, I mean, you're going to have events like that for sure, but then the market will probably solve that because the incentive structures between
Right.
the different
Hopefully the
participants are
ASPs kind
strong.
of move
Yeah,
themselves to
in our
jurisdictions
model,
where they
the
aren't going to
ASP
be
is
strong
sharded, right?
armed
So
and
in our model,
right.
like a treasury company or two would be part of running the actual ARC server, right? So
But
they
by
would
the
be
way,
running their
how
mainnet.
the sharded AS, I mean, so the ones that you're building now, right? Presumably those aren't on mainnet yet, right?
Yeah, no, far away.
Okay. So in terms of development, I mean, what are the hurdles you're facing with trying to get a sharded ASP to work? Because I mean, it sounds like it's adding more
Yeah, it's adding
complexity,
complexity,
right?
the music ceremony, right? So,
Hmm.
but then we are also taking some like honest trade or like honest choices of like we expect every user to actually run a VPS somewhere that's signing daily for them, right? Which sounds like, okay, now did you even solve anything? Well, yes, you don't have to balance channels, but you do need to have a server somewhere, right? And some ARC
Right. So in
implementations
other
use,
words, you're running an app on your desktop at all times,
for
right?
example, right, or with a
Kind of
VPS
like the
that
way you're
can,
already doing with a Lightning
yeah,
node
except you have to
already.
manage channels, which is kind of the
Right.
main like workload, right? So
Yep.
spinning up a VPS. I mean, we all have servers that are, the Facebooks and everybody's hosting for us at the end of the day anyway. So not that we use Facebook a lot, but just as an example.
Hmm.
Yeah. So the idea is that you do that kind of honest decision of saying, hey, we have agents that then sign for me as a user, and that gets spun up automatically if I sign up, and then the fees I pay for making payments cover that, hopefully, right? But then the music, anyways, to just answer your question, in terms of funding, so we're trying to raise open source funding for this, but then being a BIP 110 supporter is not going to help me in that, I think.
Well, the good
uh,
news is you won't be a BIP 110 supporter for much longer.
we'll see about that. but yeah, so that's kind of part of it. The flow rate, the company I'm working for, that I'm running, is separate from the ARC project, because the ARC project is open source completely, right? We're not trying to do that as a company, right? That's the whole point. Like, make a project that is completely open source, that allows for third party funding when you decide to run ARC as a wallet. You shouldn't have to rely on a ARC company for that, right? You should have open source software that is, not to say that Second isn't open source, it is, but they're also an ARC server provider that's supposed to fund your wallet if you decide to choose to run ARC. But it's not like I'm against them in any way. I support them, and I think it's a good first step in terms of getting adoption.
Cool. All right. Well, look forward to see what you put together. I've been a pretty big fan of the idea of ARC since Barack first came up with it. I went to his kind of that first whiteboard session that he had with Robin Linus, where they talked through it, and
Oh, you
it
were
was-
there when they did that video, that old
I
video?
was, yeah, I was on that
Oh,
call.
nice. I've seen that.
I asked some pretty dumb questions, I think, but whatever. I wanted to understand it because
I
it kind
think for
of was
me, like
mind blowing.
as a very conservative guy, like looking at ARC initially, I was like, this is another shit coin. Like, what the fuck is this? And then my CTO kind of convinced me to look into it, and I got convinced in the end. Obviously, Lightning has a lot of onboarding issues and the challenges of incentives and hassle. And ARC makes sense, and hopefully it makes even more sense if you can have like offline receive and all that fancy stuff.
Right. Yeah.
But then even with Lightning and ARC, does it even scale to 8 billion people? Who knows? Because the whole unilateral exit thing is a big issue if you have large events. But yeah, we'll see what we can do.
Yeah. I mean, I think ultimately you probably will never need to scale to 8 billion people. I think you'll probably need to scale to, I don't know, a billion, but probably not even that. Maybe 800 million, right? 80 million, 1% of the people. I mean, who knows where the threshold will be? I think most people, well, first of all, most people don't have very much value. And so they're just transacting day to day, and they don't really care if their, daily money is custodial, right? So they maybe are a little bit off the table until at least they are cash flow positive and can generate some savings. But even the people who are generating little amounts of savings, there is a economies of scale that happens with custodial solutions where for a very poor person, I mean, I could see them opting into that system just because it saves them on fees, right? And at least until they've saved up enough to justify using a more trustless solution, I could see them opting into, using like mints, right? Or like using eCash or using
Yeah,
ARCs
you're
or
probably gonna
whatever,
have them on
I
the edge.
mean,
Yeah.
well, actually, ARCs are trustless, but what I'm saying, like more custodial solutions that have lower fees and more economies of scale, and I think there's there's always going to be these trenches of or tranches of classes in Bitcoiners in Bitcoin that are primarily determined by economic output, to put it bluntly. And so the most productive people economically will be settling on chain. There'll be another tranche of people who are like just always on second layers and who can't afford to go on chain very often. And then there will probably be the vast majority of people in the smallest the largest tranche who are just dependent on custodians because they're benefiting from the economies of scale, and also they just don't have very much. And my hope is that in a purely hyper Bitcoinized world, you have quite a few options, right? I'm hoping you see a flourishing of more private banks, less regulation, and like fewer KYC requirements and more jurisdictional arbitrage. And then you have like real opportunities for people to kind of spread out the risk across custodians. You don't have to put all your eggs in one basket. You don't have to like KYC. You have more privacy, even using custodial solutions like eCash. So I mean, I see a world that works even if you have the majority of people still using custodial solutions, because those custodians themselves will be competing with one another. Ones who rehypothecate will be punished very quickly and fail. And then, hopefully, because we're in a hyper Bitcoinized world, the government shrinks and isn't able to like impose stupid regulations on them in the first place.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I have a completely different mindset when I go to these suit coiner conferences, right? Because I think about those kind of things daily, and I think about like if I'm a treasury company, what if I deploy on Lightning early? What if I finance or fund an ARC server? What if I have a good track record of doing that? I have uptime. I don't have any forced closures. Like these kinds of data points that are reputational, right? This is what will matter if you're a corporate Bitcoin holder long term. What will matter is your track record of deploying your capital efficiently and in a way that is not trying to rug pull users, trying to double spend users, and all these kind of things, right? But this matters mostly in Lightning and Arc because those are the systems that need that liquidity, right? Where you can actually make a return on your Bitcoin. So every time I listen to like a Bitcoin Treasury podcast, it's like I would like this to be discussed, and that's kind of the message I'm trying to push: is that look at what you actually can build natively, and then how can you commercialize that and create that into an actual like native business of infrastructure, rather than just speculating on the price. Because if you just speculate, you can just hold it privately. Why put it in a balance sheet, right? Like okay, if SpaceX buys Bitcoin, for that reason. But if you're actually building like the typical treasury company and you're doing that treasury play, you should really think about your strategy because it's not going very well for them.
Right. Well, never does during a bear market. And we'll see. We'll see kind of who survives this one, makes it to the other side. By the way, Dave, I think you and I agree on 99% of everything.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of friends who are anti BIP 110 for sure, and we're friends, and we agree on like, yeah, as you say, 99% of things. This one was a special situation for sure, but it's I can't really put my finger on it, but it's an interesting event in Bitcoin's history for sure.
I don't think it's much of a mystery, Dave. I mean, I think something like 85% of BIP 110 supporters are traditional religious oriented, at least if not practicing in culture. So it's not surprising that they would look more towards tradition rather than innovation as their guiding light on what they want to see.
Yeah, I guess that's what the critique is from my friends that are technical, like that they have the technical authority, and they do in these. Like, I'm more of a lightning guy, like that's my expertise area on the technicals and all that. I'm not a protocol level expert. I wouldn't call me that, right? Myself that, but from listening and reading like long form content, I kind of made my decision pretty early. And then the question is, how early do I signal that as a business person? Like, when do I actually go out and real BIP 110 and create memes, right? That's kind of where I was telling you guys before, that I think there are a lot of business owners and people working for Bitcoin corporations of different kinds that aren't speaking out because it's such a hot topic, and they wait until the last minute if we're gonna get to that point. We'll see. I mean, I'm not going to say that it's. I mean, I'm obviously joking when I'm saying that it's BIP 110 has won or similar stuff, right? But it's looking quite good in terms of traction. And then you might say, well, why didn't you succeed 5 months ago or whatever? But I don't think really that's the case with such a minor change. So that's why I think this time it's different from other forks for sure.
I have a question for you, Dave. And I'm curious. So, you kind of being active in Lightning, and presumably you're following like the updates that Core's been making to, improve Lightning and Arc for that matter. I mean, how is your view of Core right now? Are you kind of in the camp that Core is compromised and they're not actively trying to make Bitcoin better money, or do you still see the improvements they're bringing to their client in order to make, like, for example, certain policy better for these second layers?
What I can tell you, I don't have all the information, but what I can tell you is I know a lot of people that are highly intelligent, but they don't have like they don't have that stoicism, like what Anand was talking about, kind of like they're not really super principled. Like, they're principled enough to be in Bitcoin, but they're more in Bitcoin sometimes because they're technical people, right? And that's kind of the cultural difference that I wouldn't maybe trust I wouldn't be in a trench with them in World War One. Like, I would rather choose a bit 110er to be in a trench. So what am I trying to say with this? Well, I think that I know a lot of people that have received grants, for example, and sometimes I think, like, this guy is getting this much money for doing this little thing. Like, what is that worth it? Like, who's funding this, right? So that's also thinking I think I've been keeping my eye on, like, I think just money has been handed out left and right in that small sector that I've looked at and the people that I've talked to. And then my question is like, well, how big is that issue? Like, how many developers in core or in adjacent organizations or companies are just receiving money for little to no value, that for Bitcoin's purpose, right? I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not going to point any fingers on any particular people, but I can definitely be sure that there are not enough principled, like, deeply conservative people in the core. Like, now I'm not talking about Bitcoin core, but like in the core of Bitcoin, there aren't enough decision makers that are traditional people. That's just an overall take that I have, that I think a lot of people agree with, and I think that's a big risk, because those people that aren't principled, like have children or are married, I would argue that those people that aren't married, have children, they're more easily manipulated and more affected by bad actors, and that's, I think the history has shown that in multiple times. So that's kind of a big critique I have for the community in general.
And the reason for that is if you don't have children, you're more of a high time preference because you're not thinking about the next generation. You're concerned about, what's fun and what's interesting. And I think traditional minded people are more concerned about things like nonprofits that sort of have to justify their existence by doing the next sort of work. And I have more of a problem with the idea of continuous renewal funding for developers. I'm much more like the kind of like per project idea of, hey, here's an RFP. We need to work on this thing. We need a developer to do it, but there's no understanding of making a career out of continuously building on Bitcoin.
Yeah, and I can also add that, like, as a business person, like, anytime I ever hired a developer, like a software developer, you always had a situation where they wanted to do like a feature or something cool, or like, and it was kind of like this weird thing where they had to prove their role in a way. I mean, it depends on which type of company you run, but you either have to fire the person because there's nothing to do right now that is important for that person to do, or you keep them hired and then they work on like stupid shit. So this is a big problem, like in business in general, and especially with software development, because it's, if you're not a technical person, you don't have enough experience to kind of remove that person. Now, Bitcoin is vastly different from the average business that hires a developer, right? This is technology in itself, but I think that kind of aspect of you keep funding the same person and then they get entrenched in this, the big Bitcoin community, or what you might call it. I think that's a huge problem. So you need to have a lot more new people coming in, and preferably having a mixture of more conservative people and not having any bad actors is the whole point. And how can you verify that you don't have bad actors if you're only looking at the technicals? That's not possible. You have to look at the people. What are their values? What are their like convictions in life? If you just look at data, I mean, that's very autistic, right?
Well, I mean, Bitcoin was built primarily by autists,
Yeah, no,
historically.
that's a good point. And my point is like, and we have to thank them for that, right? And I have a lot of friends who call me an autistic person, right? And it's like, they can call me that. But anyways, uh, I think that if you think about Bitcoin's growth rate and like the curve, there will be a point in time where people will become very, very, very conservative, right? Because you have a money now that's more conservative than gold, right? So this means that when you reach hyper Bitcoinization, people will be more conservative than people have ever been, as long as Bitcoin does what it's supposed to do. So I think Bitcoin 10 is an early sign of that, and people think we're crazy because we're trying to make a minor change to a problem that people think is minuscule, right? But we think it's a huge problem because we have the time preference that is lower than the average person on Earth.
Careful, you're going to get flamed for calling Bitcoin conservative like I did. I wrote an essay and I said that Bitcoin is the most conservative asset ever to exist. And that was based off of a Sifo-Dyne chapter, and I got endlessly flamed for it, which was fun.
I mean, I think the reason why people might get flamed for those types of things is because maybe they're not fully dialed into, the work that is being done in Bitcoin Core currently, which is facilitating all of these, kind of awesome second layers that are now possible. For example, ARC would not be possible if we hadn't gotten package relay added to Bitcoin Core, which is a policy change which allows you to relay packages of transactions, which is absolutely critical for ARC to work without CTV, right? So it's a relay policy change that basically enabled ARC. And I mean, this is something that I believe Gloria worked on. So it's like we have these things that are like very clearly enabling better monetary properties of Bitcoin. They're policy related, right? You've got packet relay, ephemeral anchors,
Is it
cluster
like
mempool,
doesn't
right? I
like
mean,
men represent like 98% of Bitcoin holders or Bitcoin holdings?
wait, sorry, say that
So
again.
like, so men, don't men represent like 98% of Bitcoin holdings or something?
Most likely, yeah. I mean, I think most of
Yeah.
most
So
of the
I mean,
Bitcoin holdings are held
speaking.
by OGs, and I think there's very few women OGs.
Yeah, so like that thing that happened at all is kind of like a huge mistake. I mean, I gotta be upfront. Like, it makes no sense statistically that can even happen. That you would have a maintainer. Anyways, I don't want to get too
Well,
extreme here, but
I think if
it's kind of
you
like,
if you actually, I mean, so this is one thing I have a huge problem with, because I think, I think there was a lot of propaganda that was pushed out by Nazis and, directed kind of unjustifiably at Gloria, because when you look at her actual commits and the work she did to enable things like ARC, those things wouldn't be there without her, right? Dave, half of your job wouldn't be possible without Gloria. I mean, that's kind of crazy to even think,
I get
right?
your point, and
I
I'm
don't
not
think the
like
argument is that Gloria couldn't do the work. I think the argument is that there was a definite and confirmed by evidence push for DEI by people like
Uh,
Matt Corallo within court. I know that Luke
uh,
voted for her as well. I get it.
I think actually that that's
I can give you my
propaganda,
point. What I was trying to say,
and I
because
think
before
you can actually disprove that if you just look at the actual technical commits and the
yeah, but
reasons
we're just
why
from like
she
a
was even
historical
made a maintainer in
perspective.
the
Like
first place. And by the way,
the
I think
only reason
when you
you have
look at like the pushback that she did, the trolling she did basically. Imagine you are a kick-ass dev. You're enabling all these things that make Bitcoin better money. You're, committing your life to doing these things, and then some retards start calling you, like a slut and a DEI hire. At least me, I would troll the fucking shit out of them. Like I would have trolled the shit out of you guys 10 times harder than Gloria did. I think she kind of bit her tongue at times, but other times she let loose, right? And she kind of trolled the shit out of you. Now, you might think as a maintainer, she shouldn't have done that. I believe she should have trolled you the fuck harder. Like, it's like you're making fun of her for no reason at all, and because you've been lied to, right? You bought into some propaganda. But if you actually knew what you were talking about, you looked at the commits and you actually knew technically how she was contributing to Bitcoin, you wouldn't have fallen for that propaganda. So, I mean, I think that's, kind of where I'm coming from
I
with
don't
that.
care about her individually. I think it's like a whole umbrella thing. It's not about one particular person, and I have never
I mean,
ever seen
it
anything.
was made about one person, and you can deny that,
Yeah,
but it
I've
is
never
true,
contributed to
right?
that, so that's not on me at least. But
Sure.
my point is that like before fiat, you had men mostly in the workforce, and before even you had the workforce, you didn't even have jobs in that sense because you didn't have fiat, right? So and the industrial revolution, people think that just came out of nowhere, but it actually came from having usury, widespread usury, and money printing and other things. But I think that we need a great reset in terms of like conservative values in Bitcoin, regardless of BIP 110 or not, because I don't identify with like most Bitcoin conferences at all. Like if I go to a conference, like I don't know what people are doing.
Well,
Like they're
are you
debating
going
like
to the
crazy.
right ones or the wrong ones? Because I mean,
I
wrong
I went to
conferences
like
to go
10
to,
different
right?
countries. Like I went all over the world. Like the last ones, I went to
Well,
was it 10
are
different
you
conferences.
going to like like the Bitcoin plus ones that are like 100% technical? Or are you going to like Bitcoin Magazine?
Technical ones as well, yeah, and even I think I would say people are more liberal like in the technical ones, to be
Are
honest.
you
Like
going
people
to
are more.
Bitcoin Alpha with Fred Krueger?
No, I would agree. I mean, I think that the academics tend to be more liberal, because they're
Yes,
just
Yes.
because they're more intellectual.
and I think
To be
I think
honest.
that's a complete misnomer. I don't have time to break that down, but if I'm not sure, did you read my essay on Marxism and Bitcoin? I grew up in San Francisco, and I was like a socialist for early part of my life until I got smarter and learned how things should function and how it fails. And I'm very, very trained at spotting Marxist language. I've seen it like throughout many organizations over my career and seen how it captures organizations. So my problem isn't really with Gloria as an individual. It's with the unconscious ethos that she promotes and represented, and that many others in liberal cities that work on technology do. And I'm somewhat of an outlier, having worked in startup tech in that field, in that area,
What
and
types of
having
things
seen.
specifically? Because I don't know if I'm privy to those. I mean, I've watched her like technical talks about her work on Lightning, right? But or not Lightning, but like these relay policies that she's working to enable things with Lightning. But what other things in maybe her more dumbed
We
down
don't have time to go
podcast
line by
talks?
line, but it's essentially a subjective morality view of things. Like it's a basically a postmodern approach of deconstruction
Hmm.
of how you look at ideas. Are ideas they're are they defined by their function, or are they defined by their components? And when people believe that things are defined by their components, you get stuff like abortion is fine because it's just not a person, it's a bunch of cells, right? Because you break things down, it's just parts, and I don't have to justify my actions anymore. And it's that sort of thinking that's rampant, especially in liberal cities. And when you have people building stuff, they stop seeing the whole and they only see the parts. But I'm sorry, I don't have any more time here. I've actually got to go to dinner.
Okay.
Read the essay at the top of, that's the second one, I think, if you want to get more information about what I believe.
Cool.
I also have to go, but thank you for the discussion. It was very fruitful, and
I do
share.
think
You did say earlier that
if you
you
ever
did say earlier that.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought since you have to go.
Yeah, you guys did say earlier that BIP 110 does not decrease or disincentivize. I would assume that you also mean disincentivize spam whatsoever or arbitrary data. So please share anything here in the chat or whatever it's called, so I can check that out, because I'd like to really get my teeth into the data.
No doubt.
Please share anything that you might. I'll follow you back so you can send me a DM as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm I'm the type of people. I'm the type of account, like, I'll follow just about anybody who is using Bitcoin as their unit of account, even if they're a scammer. Like, if their MO is getting more Bitcoin, I'm interested in what they're doing and what they're how they're treating or using Bitcoin, even if it's for scams. Just because there's still a data point in the ecosystem. And I say this because I follow a decent amount of scammers, right? JPEGers or shitcoiners, as you might say. And as such, I kind of see what they're posting and what they're saying and posting and sharing is PRs that essentially bypass all the BIP 110 rules. So, like, you've got Casey, who has already released a PR that redefines inscriptions in a way that bypasses BIP 110.
Like, I've seen that stuff, but like, for me, I'm concerned about the quote that you say that BIP 110 does not achieve anything whatsoever. I think that's a bit harsh, but I'd love to look at that information and go through that in detail.
Sure.
Because my kind of take is that even if it decreases or increases the cost of doing these things by 0.2%, I'm all for it, to do that soft fork.
Yeah, I mean,
because
my argument there would be that, so it's not that it increases the cost in a fee rate sense, right? And I mean, it's not like getting rid of the SegWit discount or anything like that. What it's really doing is it's increasing the cost by making them use whatever it is, 0.5 to 1 or 2% more V bytes per transaction. And in doing that, you're not forcing them to pay more fees for the same amount of block space. You're forcing them to consume more block space, thereby making it more scarce for the rest of us. So you're actually causing the opposite effect that you want. Like, you want them to use less block space, and for there to be more for monetary use, right? Like, you actually,
I think if it's more expensive for them, that's what makes sense, because the block space is not a huge problem.
Well, I think that makes sense in the in a world where you have high demand for monetary use, and I think in that world you've already priced them out anyways, and so increasing
I'm thinking in a world where we already have like $100,000.
Yeah, for sure. In that world, I think spam's not a problem anyways,
like that's
right?
Like, I'm living in the universe where we have like $10,000 to $100,000 to do a main chain transaction.
Yeah,
That's what I'm.
If you're living in that universe, right, one in which, let's say, the fee rate is 100 sats per vbyte, kind of at the bare minimum, and then goes up to like 1,000 sats per vbyte when it's congested, right? I think that's like an appropriate range to expect in the distant future. I mean, you've done the calculations, like how much it costs to inscribe, say, a 1 megabyte image, right? Like, it's a whole Bitcoin. Right, a whole Bitcoin to 10 Bitcoin.
Yeah,
like,
but
that's completely
there,
unsustainable, right?
Run nodes, like.
Yeah, but also,
okay,
but then you've done the calculations for that too, though, right? And have you done the like the simulations to see how constrained your node really gets? With like mostly spam in the chain, with large blocks filled with, I don't know, JPEGs and inscriptions and yada yada yada. I mean, have you done the actual simulations to see if your node would break in any of these circumstances? Because I know Portland has, right? And he's basically run tests where he blows out the UTXO set by an order of magnitude, right? So right now it's like, what is it, 150 million?
How do we get Bitcoin in Fortnite?
Bitcoin in Fortnite, is that what you said, little kid? I don't know.
Badass.
That'd be cool. But anyways, I mean, the point is, I was just trying to get at, you know, like you want, like, so, and this is also love it or hate it, right? I don't know if you looked at Saylor's slop post today, listing his 110 AI reasons why he doesn't support
I made
BIP-110.
a video in response to
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
You should check it out. It's actually pretty
It's
good.
funny that he's doing that because you know he is the AI king, so I guess it's to be expected. But he does make some. His AI agent makes some legitimate points, and one of which is, oh god damn it! Now I'm losing my train of thought. What was I saying before this? Fuck.
I can give you one of the things that he said in the AI
What
slop,
was I
and that
saying
was
before this though? I was just talking about. Sorry, I just looked behind me and realized my son had left the room, so I was kind of had a brain fart there.
in that AI slop that Saylor posted. Point 23 was the the 83 byte operator policy becomes consensus. So he listed one of the reasons against the fork, as you know, he took one of the things that the fork actually does, you know, deliberately, and he's listed that as a you know, a bad effect of the fork, which was it makes no sense whatsoever.
You were talking about Portland doing the calculation for block space.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, so one of the things that Saylor does mention, which I think is legitimate, right, is he basically says, you know, BIP-110 states all of these reasons why it's important, right? One of which is like it's making nodes harder to run, but it makes those statements without actual evidence backing it, empirical evidence, or you know, simulations that would prove nodes get harder to run, you know, substantially harder to run and start breaking or whatever at these different thresholds, right? And so I think what you really need to do to make the case for any of these changes, you know, whether it's BIP-110 or whatever is proposed in the future, when you make a statement like spam is making node running harder and it's, you know, centralizing node runners and, you know, all these statements you're making, you need to actually justify it with empirical evidence. And it's not hard to do that, right? You can run simulations. You can, you know, blow out the UTXO set in, you know, when you're running like, you know, was it rig tests, right? Or like you can like do these things on your node and fucking like test out scenarios, right? And when you do it, you're probably going to be surprised to learn that your node is pretty resilient. Like, you know, I mean, the engineers who built these things are fucking smart and they've kind of prepared for these scenarios. And, you know, unless you're running it on a complete piece of shit, you know, in which case, sorry. But like, you know, honestly, I don't know. You may disagree, but we're not optimizing the base layer for like people who can't afford, you know, a $300 node or something, right? Like if you can't afford a $300 node, you're not gonna be able to afford the base layer anyways. So what's the point, right? We're optimizing it in a way where people can run it on consumer grade hardware, right? And consumer grade hardware might cost a few $100, but you'll always be able to run it on that hardware. And the truth is, if you've got, you know, like a 6-year-old decent laptop. For example, I'm running a node on a MacBook Air from 2020. Okay, costs like $250 to $350 on eBay used. You can buy it, and then you've got like an SSD, $200, right? So you're talking about $500 of hardware. You're basically set up in a way where you could run a node. UTXO set could bloat by like 10x. You know, you could have spam filled with, you know, blocks filled with spam for years and years on end, and your node wouldn't be affected at all by that. You know, you wouldn't drop off. You would stay in sync. You know, there'd be no problems at all. So I mean, you have to actually run these tests and actually parameterize the effect you're claiming spam has. And I think the reason why a lot of people don't is because, you know, if they even try to, they realize right away that they're wrong, and that spam's not really a big threat. Primarily because we've already engineered these nodes to handle these types of scenarios, right? And we have a block size limit. I mean, the whole point of block size limit is so that we don't get this type of shit that makes node running centralized, right? That was the whole fight over 2017. And that still prevails today. It's not like spammers are making blocks larger than the allowed law dictates, and there's nothing they could do to do that anyways. So I don't know. I mean, I have a big problem with, first of all, like the initial premise that knots initially 3 years ago started with, and then evolved into BIP 110 now with, right, the emergency aspect and nature of the whole thing, because I think everything is just overblown and not very well, supported by real evidence.
I mean, if we excluded the technical part, which obviously is very essential, I would say that on a cultural level, Bitcoin is in a very bad place. So that's at least a situation that needs to be handled in some way. If it's a fork or if it's some
I think
kumbaya coming
maybe in your
together.
community you feel like that, but
No,
I
I
think your
think in
community
general,
is
like
fairly small compared to the rest of the ecosystem, right? And culturally, everyone else is kind of just like doing what they're doing. They're just using Bitcoin.
yeah, but I think that's an issue that might hopefully becomes a byproduct of BIP110 activating, that you solve a lot of these edge cases or edge problems on the edges where people are building stuff that does not provide material value to Bitcoin, and that takes resources away from stuff that should be invested in more time and energy and money. So who knows?
Well, again, I view this the opposite. I mean, I think what you're engaging in, if you do support BIP 110, is an endless mouse and cat game, right? Cat and mouse game, where you are diverting valuable developer resources and mind share away from things that do make Bitcoin better money, right? Like provably so, like covenants that could, enhance ARC and give you better privacy and better scaling and better programmability for things like inheritance, right? And vaults, or even things like cross input signature aggregation, which gives you better scaling and better privacy. I mean, there's like all sorts of these
It doesn't
updates.
permanently remove the ability to implement covenants, right? So it's more of a how quickly do you want to implement it, and we shouldn't rush that, by the way. Anyways,
I agree. I mean, I think. Well, personally, I think we've scaled probably too quickly, right? Which is reflected by the lack in on-chain use. I think people have already moved primarily up to second layers and side chains.
Yeah.
And so with the number of users we have now, we actually don't need to scale any further. And I don't think we should anyways. But that being said, we still need to work on these updates and, do more R&D and kind of preparatory work, so that when the time comes and we do get the next wave of 10x adoption, and all of a sudden the chain's congested and everyone's freaking the fuck out, right? We have, that silver bullet, and we can say, okay, well, here's CTV or whatever other thing
we're definitely going to have
want,
a
right?
mass event of congestion at some
I
point.
agree.
Sure, because that's
Yeah.
nobody talks about.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I prematurely banged the drum on like UTXO management and consolidation and the importance of not having dust UTXOs and that type of thing. And I did it during the ordinals craze, because that was kind of, in my opinion, that was the warning shot. I think if anything good came from ordinals, it was that people started to realize how scarce block space really is. And if a few thousand retarded spammers can congest the chain for a year and bring fees up into the tens, if not hundreds of ePyte. I mean, imagine what 1 million monetary users who want to settle on chain on a monthly basis could do. And anyways, I mean, I think it was a warning shot, right? And so people need to actually know how to use Bitcoin and how to manage their UTXOs. So I was banging the table on that. I mean, and I think it was too early. And actually, we should be banging on the table now, because now's the time to learn it, right? It's super cheap. So if you haven't learned UTXO management or how to consolidate UTXOs, or why it's important to not really have dust in your wallets, all right, now's the time to learn. It's super cheap to do it. But of course, people will put it off and they'll wait until that next wave happens, and then they'll freak out, and then they'll spend 1,000 times more to consolidate their UTXOs or be left with economically unspendable dust. And that's just the way it is, I guess. Anyways, okay. I think I have to go too.
I gotta go, but
Yep.
thanks for the conversation. As